Chapter 21:16. The second method was to use something called the heavenly mystic body, the ancient celestial dragon. Simply put, it was an enhanced version of the ancient magic dragon, but it looked better. The third method required the 7-star grass, 1-leaf flower, 3-eyed divine stone, and Guhai Bingshin. The thing that came out was actually called the crystal dragon. Of course, Yixian didn't even know what these 4 materials were. Therefore, Yixian didn't have any intention of getting the ancient magic dragon's egg. He would think about it in the future. He would just take whatever materials he came across in the future. Besides, devour points weren't that easy to obtain. After looking at the ancient magic dragon's egg, Yixian focused on his biggest gain, the ancient magic dragon's corpse, as well as the universe rings of Li Lei, and the other 3. Ding! System notification. Congratulations to the host for completing the hidden mission, the last ancient magic dragon. Ding! System notification. System recovery rate increased by 5%. Current recovery rate is 10%. Ding! System notification. Attention to the host. The host can now make a choice. The ancient magic dragon's corpse can increase the host's cultivation by 6 levels, or extract its essence to repair the system by 1%. The host will then receive a reward of 1 level. Ding! Please make your choice. Yixian frowned. Choice. The system was actually asking him to choose. One must know that the system rarely did such a thing. Could be said that the system was very humane. However, Yixian was keenly aware that the system seemed to be undergoing some kind of change. It was just that this change was happening silently. Even Yixian himself didn't know what kind of change would happen. He didn't even know if it was good or bad. Of course, other things aside, it was better to make a choice first. 1% of the system's recovery rate. To be honest, it was very little. However, Yixian still resolutely chose the second option. 1% of the system's recovery rate, and he would then receive a reward of 1 level. This was because once the system's recovery was complete, Yixian would receive even more benefits. Compared to the earlier recovery of the system, Yixian's delay in leveling up was actually not a big deal. After all, not all missions could repair the system. Even if he broke through 6 times, it was just empty talk without a repair mission. System, I choose the second option. Ding! System prompt, the host has made a choice. Ding! System notification. System repair rate increased by 1%. Current rate is 11%. Ding! Host has made a breakthrough and is now a level 4 middle true god. Yixian nodded. The matter here was considered settled. However, Li Lei and Yixian still had to be dealt with. System, I want to revive Li Lei and the others. Is there any way? Ding! System notification. Host can now find special materials to revive Li Lei and the others. Host can now nurture Li Lei and the others' quintessence fragments in the plant space and slowly restore their divine power. Alright, that's all we can do. Yixian knew that it was almost impossible to revive the 4 of them immediately. After breaking through to the true god realm, it was no longer that easy to resurrect. As for those people that Yixian had killed before, he had already used his divine power to restore them, allowing them to live in the devouring space. However, as long as there was a chance, it was fine. After settling everything, Yixian began to notice the situation in front of him. At this moment, Yixian was standing in front of a tall tower. The tower was so tall that it reached the clouds. Even if Yixian tried his best to see it, he could not see how tall it was. However, the surroundings of the tower were empty. There was nothing. Yixian knew that this should be the 3rd stage. He did not hesitate and walked straight in. He pushed open the door of the tower. In an instant, an extremely strong suction force sucked Yixian in. At the same time, a voice rang out. Welcome to the Endless Tower. Congratulations, Trial Taker. You have successfully entered the 3rd stage. The rules of the 3rd stage are very simple. You just need to climb to the highest level of the Endless Tower. Then you will pass. Of course, because the difficulty of the Endless Tower is high, you can choose to leave at any time once you have climbed halfway. However, I need to remind you that there are powerful divine beasts in every level of the tower. Enjoy it, Trial Taker. Enjoy this endless slaughter. The one who spoke was, without a doubt, the guardian of the 3rd stage. However, the guardian of the third stage seemed to be even more despicable than the previous two stages. He did not even appear. Of course, since the rules were clear, Yi Xian did not need to wait any longer. He lifted his feet and walked towards the second level. It seemed that the bottom level was only used to receive guests. Therefore, there were no divine beasts. However, when Yi Xian walked into the second level, he saw a divine beast. Lower rank 1 deity? Yi Xian was slightly stunned as he looked at the ferocious tiger with bull horns. He was incomparably astonished. He was actually only a rank 1 god. Wasn't that too simple? Yi Xian casually killed the divine beast. However, what surprised him was that after the beast was killed, it turned into a puff of green smoke and disappeared. Could this be a doppelganger? Of course, Yi Xian did not care so much. He walked straight to the second level. It's still a lower rank 1 deity. However, there are 10 of them this time. Since they were not a threat, Yi Xian casually killed them and continued to walk forward. He continued to kill and climb. Yi Xian could not remember how many levels he had climbed. However, he had already understood the rules here. The monsters here would change every 10 levels. There was 1 on the first level and 10 on the second level. There were 50 on the third level and so on until there were 1,000 on the 10th level. Of course, the levels would not change. However, at the 11th level, there would be a lower rank 5 deity monster. Then, there would be a peak lower deity monster. Then, there would be a mid-rank 1 deity monster. Then, there would be a mid-rank 5 deity monster. Now Yi Xian was facing 1,000 mid-rank 5 deity monsters. To be honest, Yi Xian was very tired at the moment. One should know that Yi Xian was only a mid-rank 4 deity. However, he had to face 1,000 mid-rank 5 deity monsters. It could be said that the pressure was immense. Yi Xian stood quietly at the entrance. At the entrance, the divine beasts would not take the initiative to attack. It could be considered as giving the challengers a chance to take a breather. However, Yi Xian had tried. He could only stay here for an instant's time. Once the time was up, he would be pushed out by a force. Chapter 21:17. Now there were divine beasts of the middle grade true god realm. The next wave would be peak middle grade true gods. Moreover, this trial seemed to have no end. Standing on the spiral staircase, Yi Xian could see that there were countless levels above. Endless trial. Endless slaughter. Indeed, it lived up to its name. Suddenly, a force came from behind Yi Xian and pushed Yi Xian inside. It turned out that the rest time was over. In an instant, those divine beasts rushed toward Yi Xian like a flood. Yi Xian had no choice but to take out the Godslayer and start the battle again. In such a trial, one should not try to use any powerful attacks, because that would only be a waste of one's divine power. The wisest choice was to use the most energy and divine power to battle. Although he had the super recovery ability of the mighty body of the war god, under such circumstances, there were times when he could not make ends meet. After all, every time he killed a divine beast on a level, he would not be allowed to stay on that level for too long. Of course, there was a limit to the time he could kill the divine beasts. Yi Xian casually swung his sword and killed a divine beast that was pouncing toward him. He watched as the divine beast turned into white smoke. In his heart he was thinking, what should I do? This trial seemed to have no end. Even if Yi Xian passed the peak middle grade true god realm level, even if he passed the peak upper grade true god realm level, then what should he do with the divine beasts after that? What's more, there were those who had surpassed the divine beasts realm. Continuing to fight was not a solution at all. Yi Xian frowned as he continuously slaughtered the divine beasts in his hands. At the same time, he was also thinking in his heart. However, no matter how hard Yi Xian tried, he realized that he could not solve the problem in front of him. In the end, all the divine beasts were killed. Yi Xian could only helplessly go to the next level. Since he was already here, he might as well take it easy. However, when Yi Xian went to the next level, the voice of the guardian of the third stage finally sounded again. Yo, not bad, young man. Congratulations. You have passed the first trial and obtained the title of beginner endless trial tester. Haha. However, I'm afraid that everyone who can come here will be able to obtain this title. Oh, I forgot to tell you. As long as you kill a wave of divine beasts that are about the same level as you will be able to obtain the elementary title. Then you can make a choice. Do you want to continue the challenge or leave directly? And let me give you a kind reminder. The lower your cultivation level, the lower the difficulty level of the divine beasts you need to pass through. As long as you obtain the Super Endless Trial title, you will have passed my test. How about it? Have you made up your mind? Yi Xian heaved a sigh of relief when he heard the words of the guardian of the 4th level. Fortunately, this endless trial was automatically adjusted according to the realm of the person who entered, and it was not really necessary to fight to the last level. It looked like Yi Xian still had a chance to pass. But even so, Yi Xian decided to withdraw for the time being. Guardian, does this mean that after I obtain the elementary trial tester title, as long as I have time I can come back for the trial again? Of course. As long as you are willing, you can come back for the trial at any time. However, you only have 3 chances. After you use up all 3 chances, you will no longer have the right to enter this place. Alright, I understand. I choose to leave for the time being. Yi Xian immediately stated his decision. He knew that with his current strength, he would not be able to pass at all. Alright, since you have decided, I will send you off. These are 3 directional teleportation talismans. I will send you directly out of the trial grounds. If you want to continue the challenge, crush the talisman and you will be able to come here directly. Let me give you another reminder. If your cultivation level increases and you come back, the Divine Beast cultivation level will also be adjusted accordingly. Do you understand? Alright, I understand. Following Yi Xian's reply, a white light flashed and Yi Xian disappeared on the spot. By the time Yi Xian reacted, he had appeared in a foreign place. In other words, the guardian of the 4th stage had sent Yi Xian out of the Valley of Despair. F***ck. I just wanted to see if I could find any materials in the Valley of Despair to strengthen myself. The guardian actually sent me out. Yi Xian was speechless. He had never intended to leave the Valley of Despair. But since he was already out, there was no other way. Luckily, he could return at any time. Yi Xian had to complete the Valley of Despair. After all, the system repair mission was still there. Yi Xian could imagine that as long as he completed the exploration of the Valley of Despair, he would definitely receive many system repairs. Even a complete system repair was not impossible. Since he was already out, Yi Xian could also go out and look for suitable materials to strengthen himself. The best way was to strengthen or break through the 2 demigod bloodlines. Although the demigod bloodline was extremely powerful, it was still very difficult to break through. But obviously, if Yi Xian wanted to pass the trial of the Boundless Tower, then just Yi Xian's demigod bloodline was not enough. Of course, it was not that easy to break through. Perhaps it would be very difficult to obtain some strengthening. Yi Xian released his divine telekinesis. He believed that the guardian would not be able to send him too far away. However, Yi Xian still underestimated. This was the realm of the gods. The concept of the realm of the gods was different from other places. Although the guardian had only casually sent Yi Xian away, it had directly sent Yi Xian thousands of miles away. Using his divine telekinesis, Yi Xian saw a huge city in the distance. Since he had discovered the city, Yi Xian did not delay and immediately flew towards the city. Carefree City. That's a good name. At this moment, Yi Xian was standing outside the huge city gate. Looking at the bustling crowd, he was a little surprised. This was because he saw that most of the people here were just ordinary people, and they looked very strange. Taurens, kobolds, birdmen with wings, and snail people with huge shells on their backs. What was going on? Most importantly, these people's cultivation levels were extremely low. There were even people who did not have any cultivation levels. Just what was going on? Welcome to Carefree City. Is this your first time here? Just as Yi Xian was puzzled, a young man ran in front of him. He had no cultivation level. He was actually a mortal. Yi Xian frowned slightly and asked the person, "What's going on with this city?" Chapter 21:18. What do you mean by what's going on? Sir, I don't know how to answer your question. The man rubbed his head with a confused look on his face. Oh, what I mean is, why are there so many mortals here? Isn't this the realm of the gods? Yi Xian could only answer directly. However, his words frightened the man so much that he immediately knelt on the ground. Honorable God, this humble one has eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. Please forgive this humble one. Yi Xian looked at the man. Get up, I'm asking you a question. Just answer me. Yes, yes, Lord God, it's like this. There are originally many native races in the realm of the gods, as well as some lower realm creatures brought up by Lord God. However, although this is the realm of the gods, not everyone can become a god. Over time, the native races of the realm of the gods, as well as mortals like me who were brought up by the ancestor from the eighth heaven, formed the mortal world of the realm of the gods. Yi Xian nodded. So that was the case. With his current realm, he was indeed a mortal, even if he was in the undying sovereign realm. In any case, it was just a name. What's more, a deity could only be called a mortal with a relatively high realm. This was not surprising. Perhaps some people obtained some special abilities after condensing the godhead, and many people chose to bring their family or disciples from the lower realm to the realm of the gods. However, the realm of the gods was extremely dangerous. Who could guarantee that they would never fall? However, the realm of the gods was full of divine power, and it was more suitable for cultivation. Naturally, many people would release their family members and disciples directly. As for the native races, Yi Xian could not say anything. However, it was strange that there were natives in the realm of the gods. Yi Xian ignored the man and walked directly into the worry-free city. Compared to the city that Yi Xian had entered previously, which was built by people with godheads, this city was much more lively. Many people were moving in and out of the worry-free city. Countless figures shuttled back and forth. In the divine realm, it was normal for even an ordinary mortal to live for thousands of years. Therefore, more and more people came. Of course, the divine world was so big that a city with a population of 1 million was just a drop in the ocean. Yi Xian casually walked around and found out the origin of the forgotten city. The city was built by the city lord, the carefree old man. In the beginning, there were only a few hundred people, but after tens of thousands of years of development, the city grew to its current size. The carefree city was equivalent to the private territory of the carefree old man. However, even so, there was still something inside. The carefree old man built the carefree pavilion in the carefree city and selected elite disciples to nurture. Needless to say, he really managed to nurture some of them. Today, there were hundreds of deities in the carefree city. It was the most powerful existence among the dozens of cities around it. Of course, this had nothing to do with Yi Xian. After casually looking around, he didn't find anything that Yi Xian needed. So Yi Xian turned around and prepared to leave. However, before he could even leave, he encountered something interesting. An army was led by an inferior heavenly god, 3 superior heavenly gods, and a dozen inferior heavenly gods. They were actually outside the carefree city. Yi Xian moved and stood at the top of the tallest building in the carefree city. Yi Xian wanted to see what was going to happen here. Carefree old man, get out here. Just as Yi Xian was ready to watch a good show, the heavenly god outside the city shouted loudly toward the carefree city. The huge sound wave even killed many mortals in the city. Damn it, old man Tianke, what are you trying to do? In the blink of an eye, another inferior heavenly god rushed out. At the same time, a protective barrier appeared above the carefree city. Countless soldiers rushed to the top of the city wall. What am I trying to do? Carefree old man. Emo Shangu has ordered you to capture the totem beasts. It's fine if you want to die, but why do you want to harm us? If you don't hand over the totem beasts, you are openly making an enemy out of Emo Shangu. If you want to die, do you want to drag us down with you? Haha, you are you. Emo Shangu is strong. We wandering cultivators naturally can't afford to offend him. However, what right do they have to capture my divine beasts with just one sentence? What right do they have to ask me to deliver it? At this point, Yi Xian finally understood that it was because of the totem beasts and Emo Shangu. When Yi Xian first came to the divine realm, he had also obtained a totem beast when he arrived at the Myriad Beast sect. Of course, compared to the dozens of totem beasts that the Myriad Beast sect had, the pitiful totem beast in Carefree City was nothing. Unfortunately, Carefree City didn't have the strength of the Myriad Beast sect, so they didn't even have the qualifications to exchange for the totem beasts. Emo Shangji's one sentence forced Carefree City to hand over the totem beasts, and they even had to deliver them personally. To put it bluntly, it was all because they were too weak. The 2 heavenly god stage experts were still bickering. However, Yi Xian wasn't prepared to continue watching, because there was no need for Yi Xian to continue paying attention to him. Strength, everything was a problem caused by strength. What he saw this time made Yi Xian understand once again that only by possessing strength Would he not be bullied by others? When Yixian left, sounds of killing could already be heard coming from the direction of Carefree City. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers were fighting, but it was all because of two heavenly god experts. Perhaps in their hearts they didn't care about the lives of mortals. Yixian summoned his Pegasus and left at lightning speed. He wasn't looking for a mortal city. Maybe he could go there to take a look when he was bored, but it wouldn't help Yixian increase his strength at all. Very soon Yixian found another city. However, this was not a city of mortals. It was a real city, a city that belonged to the gods. Yes, this is the place, Lingxian Court. I didn't expect Lingxian Court to be here. Then I can go there and see if the materials I need can be found here. Yixian landed on the ground and recalled his Pegasus at the same time. He walked into the city alone. His target was very clear. Lingxian Court. I heard that Lingxian Court will be auctioning a few precious treasures this time, but I don't know what kind of treasures they are. So what if you've heard about it? We're not qualified to participate. This auction is an internal auction. Only those invited by Lingxian Pavilion are qualified to participate. Without an invitation, no one can enter. Chapter 21:19. It looked like Yixian had come at just the right time. Auction. Not bad, not bad. Generally speaking, there would always be a few good items appearing at an auction. Of course, whether one could obtain them or not would depend on one's own wealth. This time, Yixian would not be as hard-pressed as the last time. He would use the divine crystals on him carefully. No matter what, Yixian was still a person with a net worth in the millions. However, how would one obtain an invitation letter? Oh right, Yixian suddenly remembered. When he passed the first stage in the Valley of Despair, wasn't there a person who happened to be an elder of Lingxian Court? His token was now in his hands. In that case, could he use this thing to obtain an invitation letter? Or perhaps the right to enter? At this thought, Yixian did not hesitate and walked directly to the attendant of Lingxian Court. Honorable guest, how may I help you? The attendant asked Yixian respectfully. Oh, I want an invitation letter to the auction. How can I obtain one? Sir, I am very sorry, but the auction this time is not a public auction. It is a small internal auction. Therefore, apart from those who have been invited, no one else is allowed to participate. Although the attendant spoke tactfully, the people around Yixian were amused. Haha, am I seeing things? A mere mid-level true god wants to obtain an invitation letter to the auction? Doesn't he know that the lowest level of invitation this time is the heavenly god realm? Furthermore, he actually went to ask someone from Lingxian Court. How stupid! Isn't that so? I'm dying of laughter. What does he think Lingxian Court is? What does he think Lingxian Court's internal auction is? Can anyone go just because they want to? Is that still an internal auction? There was a lot of discussion. Moreover, they were all saying that Yixian was overestimating himself. Yixian did not care about these people at all. Who cared what these people said? What Yixian wanted to do was the most important thing. Oh, so that's how it is. Then I would like to ask, can I use this to exchange for an invitation letter? Yixian did not hesitate and took out the elder's jade pendant. When the attendant saw the item in Yixian's hand, he was shocked. One had to know that Lingxian Pavilion was originally an independent force, so there was naturally a detailed division of power. As for the elders, it could be said that in each pavilion, there were usually only one or two elders in charge. Who would have thought that someone would use an elder's token to exchange for an invitation letter? Beads of sweat instantly appeared on the attendant's forehead. He submissively said to Yixian, Sir, please wait for a moment. This lowly one will immediately invite the elder out. As he spoke, the attendant bowed to the Yixian and ran away. Such a dramatic turn of events caused everyone to widen their eyes in shock. No way! Where did this guy come from? What was that thing in his hand? Why did it make the attendant so terrified? In an instant, everyone in the hall shut their mouths. As for the few people who were discussing Yixian at the beginning, their expressions changed drastically. They looked at Yixian cautiously, as if afraid that Yixian would pursue the matter. Unfortunately, Yixian did not care about these people at all, so he did not pay them any attention. Very soon, the elder of this branch rushed out in a hurry. This disciple greets the Grand Supreme Elder. What no one expected was that even this elder would be so respectful to Yixian, and even kneel down to greet him. In fact, Yixian himself did not understand what was going on. As it turned out, since Lingxian Pavilion was a place of treasures, there were naturally countless capable people. Lingxian Pavilion's Elder's Token was a very special item. No one knew how this item was refined. However, every elder only had one token. Furthermore, this token had its own spiritual intelligence and was reinforced with several unique seals. Unless the owner of the token was willing, this token would not follow anyone else. No matter how powerful one was, there was no way to forcibly control it because this token had a self-destructing effect. Of course, the elders of Lingxian Pavilion were free to choose their successors, which meant that this token could be inherited by a disciple. However, there was no doubt that as long as one had the token, one would have the authority of an elder. It did not matter how Yixian obtained this elder's token, nor did it matter what kind of thoughts that person had at that time. But now Yixian was holding this token in his hand, which meant that Yixian was the owner of this token and a legitimate elder of Lingxian Pavilion. Furthermore, he was not an ordinary elder. Get up first. Yixian was stunned and said. Now, even Yixian himself was still in a daze. What was going on? After that Lingxian Pavilion elder stood up, Yixian continued to ask. This token was indeed given to me by an elder of Lingxian Pavilion. However, I am not an elder of Lingxian Pavilion. I think you must have misunderstood something. Haha, Grand Supreme Elder, don't tease your disciple. The rules of Lingxian Pavilion have not changed for tens of millions of years. Perhaps the previous Grand Supreme Elder really gave this token to you for some reason. However, as long as you have this token, you are an elder of Lingxian Pavilion. Every elder's token in Lingxian Pavilion is fixed. In other words, the authority of every token will not change because of a person. Lingxian Pavilion only recognizes tokens and not people. F***ck. Yixian was stunned. Only recognizing tokens and not people? What kind of stupid rule was this? Wouldn't that be able to fool the people of Lingxian Pavilion with a fake token? Of course, Yixian also understood that it was almost impossible to fake a token. After all, Lingxian Pavilion was not a small faction. Yixian did not want to delve into this matter. His main goal now was to get an invitation letter. As for this token, he would wait until the next time he met Master Ku and ask him properly. Alright, I just want to ask you for an invitation letter this time. I want to participate in this auction, but unfortunately I don't have one. I wonder if you can make it convenient for me? Yixian said directly. After hearing this, the elder's face revealed a strange smile. Then he said, Well, Grand Supreme Elder, do you really not know? You have the Grand Supreme Elder's token in your hand. If you want to enter the internal auction organized by our pavilion, you can enter at any time. The token in your hand represents your authority and is more useful than any invitation letter. Chapter 21:20. At that moment, the people around Yixian, who had been discussing Yixian earlier, were all dumbfounded. They were both envious and terrified. How could a person who even an elder of Lingxian court treat with such respect be a simple person? Everyone silently watched Yixian's back as he walked into the inner hall of Lingxian court. Many people were already considering how they could curry favor with Yixian. The reason Yixian followed the elder to the inner hall was, of course, not because of the invitation letter, but because he wanted to know what good items would be auctioned this time. Yixian was even prepared to buy anything suitable in advance. This was also another benefit of the Grand Supreme Elder's token. Grand Supreme Elder, take a look. These are all the items that will be auctioned this time. The elder handed over a list to Yixian. The list clearly listed all the items that would be auctioned this time. Of course, 1/3 of the items would be auctioned by Lingxian court, while the other 2/3 would be auctioned by others. Very soon, Yixian looked through the entire list. Among them, 3 items caught Yixian's attention the most. The first item was called the Ancient Demon Finger. That's right, it was a finger of the ancient Great Demon God. It was said that the Great Demon God had already reached the Master God realm. His physical body was simply incomparably strong. There was still a huge difference between the ancient demon gods and the current demon gods. In fact, whether it was the ancient demon gods or the demon gods, they were all several times stronger than the current gods. As for the root cause, it was in the divine ability. Especially for demon gods. Demons generally walk the path of cultivation. They constantly strengthened their physical bodies to form a godhead. However, demon gods also had various divine abilities. It was just that after countless years, many demon gods' special divine abilities had been lost. The original owner of this demon god's finger was a famous ancient great demon god, the finger of the Heaven Slaughter demon god. No one knew how many divine abilities the Heaven Slaughter devil god possessed. However, everyone knew that the most powerful divine ability of the Heaven Slaughter devil god was his finger of annihilation. It was said that if the Heaven Slaughter demon god wanted to kill someone, he only needed to casually point his finger and that person would die. Even those of the same level of cultivation would not be able to block his finger. Of course, Yi Xian did not care about these rumors. What he cared about was that the finger bone contained a special substance that could strengthen his sword god bloodline. I must get my hands on this thing, Yi Xian said to himself in his heart. However, when he saw that the note was actually addressed to him, he could only smile bitterly. The second item was a flower called the Lasting Soul Flower. The Long Soul Flower only had one use, and that was to nurture the soul. Yi Xian had said that he wanted to save Li Lei and the others, so Yi Xian had to get his hands on the Lasting Soul Flower. Did Ling Xian Pavilion take this out themselves? Yi Xian looked at the note and was slightly surprised. However, he immediately smiled. Hey, who are you? Did your pavilion auction this Lasting Soul Flower? Yi Xian turned around and asked the elder of Ling Xian Pavilion. Grand Elder, you can just call me Little White. This Lasting Soul Flower is not a rare item. Someone gave it to my pavilion a few months ago. Do you like this flower, Grand Elder? Yes, I happen to need this type of material. Yi Xian nodded. Oh, since that's the case, Grand Elder can buy it directly. Grand Elder can enjoy a 50% discount in our pavilion. Disciple will make the decision to erase your transaction fee. Grand Elder only needs to pay 130,000 divine crystals for this long soul flower. Oh, so cheap? Well then, help me get it. Haha, alright, Grand Elder. However, this long soul flower is only an ordinary divine flower. If it is used to refine magic treasures, it can only be used by those below the heavenly god realm. I wonder what Grand Elder wants it for? Yi Xian was at a loss for words. This guy didn't know that he was only a mid-level true god. Furthermore, he was a newcomer to the realm of the gods. If it wasn't for a coincidence, he wouldn't even have the strength to enter Ling Xian Pavilion, let alone participate in the auction. Of course, that person was just asking casually. He didn't have to get to the bottom of it. Seeing that Yi Xian didn't reply, that person casually ordered an attendant to get the Lasting Soul Flower. As for Yi Xian, he was looking at the last item. Ever since Yi Xian came to the realm of the gods, he first killed the totem beast of the Divine Beast sect. Then, he was chased by the disciples of the Divine Beast sect and fell into the Valley of Despair. It could be said that many of his abilities were not only unusable due to the system being damaged, but also because he didn't have the opportunity to use them. However, this didn't mean that Yi Xian gave up on his original items. For example, the 100 Beast Sword Attendant. At this moment, the item placed in front of Yi Xian was a mystical water blaze stone. This was a very peculiar stone because it was neither solid nor liquid, neither gas nor void. Simply put, this stone's form was a very peculiar state of self-combustion. This mystical water blaze stone could self-combust at any time. However, the energy it produced would be confined around the stone's body and quickly condense into the stone's body. This cycle would repeat for eternity. Of course, other than its peculiar form, the most important thing was its effect. This was an excellent material to strengthen the 100 Beast Sword Servants. Not only could it increase the 100 Beast Sword Servants' attack and defense, but it could also increase the 100 Beast Sword Servants' tenacity. The concept of tenacity wasn't easy to understand. Simply put, as long as this mystical water blaze stone was combined with the 100 Beast Sword Servants, then the 100 Beast Sword Servants would undergo unexpected changes. He had to get his hands on this thing. Even if he didn't get the ancient demon god's finger bone, he must get this mystical water blaze stone. Yi Xian looked at this item. It was still on auction. Since that was the case, he didn't look at it any longer. Instead, he took the long soul flower from Elder Xiaobai's hands. After paying the divine crystals, he asked Elder Xiaobai, "How much longer until the auction?" In reply to Grand Supreme Elder, The original plan was to hold it in 3 days. Is that okay? What did Yixian mean by is that okay? Possible Yixian wanted to hold it now. Of course Yixian couldn't say this out loud. After all, it was impossible. Alright, 3 days it is. I'll come back in 3 days. Yes, Grand Supreme Elder. Chapter 21-21. Yixian was stunned. To be honest, he did not know much about the Grand Supreme Elder's identity. However, it would be good for him to meet the Grand Supreme Elder. After all, Master Ku did not tell him clearly that his token had such great authority. Sound transmission talismans, locator beasts, and other small treasures were very common even in the realm of the gods. Moreover, the distance was very far. After all, the realm of the gods was so big. How could it be possible to communicate without some conventional means? Yixian decisively condensed a few sound transmission talismans and handed them over to Elder Xiaobai. Then he said, "If there's anything you need, you can directly send me a sound transmission. Then I'll come and disturb you in 3 days." "A Grand Supreme Elder, listen to what you're saying. It's my honor to have you here. There's no need to disturb you." Yixian smiled and did not say much. Instead, he walked out directly. Since he had to wait here for the auction to start, he naturally could not leave. After all, 3 days was actually very short. Very quickly, Yixian found an inn called the Assembly of Gods Pavilion and asked for a room to stay. Speaking of which, Yixian had not tasted the food of the realm of the gods yet. This time Yixian was taking a break from his busy schedule. Naturally, he would not miss this opportunity. After spending more than 1,000 divine crystals, Yixian asked for a table of food and wine. He casually placed the God Slayer on the table and leisurely tasted the food of the realm of the gods. To be honest, although 1,000 divine crystals was indeed very expensive, this enjoyment was definitely not ordinary. Yixian only ate a few mouthfuls of the food and wine and felt extremely refreshed. However, when there were too many people, it was inevitable that there would be trouble. Moreover, especially when Yixian was being targeted. "Is this guy? I heard that he has some connections in Lingxian court. However, since he is a member of Lingxian Pavilion, this young master would like to see what he is capable of. Qikong, go and teach this brat a good lesson for me. Let him know that this is the territory of the Jubao Pavilion. The people of Lingxian Pavilion better behave themselves." "Yes, young master." A middle-aged man bowed respectfully to this young master. With a wave of his hand, he led his 3 followers towards Yixian. The Jubao Pavilion was an existence equivalent to the Lingxian Pavilion. However, Lingxian Pavilion had a wide range of branches, and anyone who came was a guest. On the other hand, Jubao Pavilion only dealt with clans and sects, and didn't care about individual gods. If the Rain Admiration Pavilion that only dealt with women was included, then these 3 auction houses were undoubtedly the 3 largest auction houses in the eastern region of the 9 Radiance Divine Realm, including Mo Shanggu and all the other powers that Yixian had come into contact with so far, were actually only powers in the 9 Radiance Divine Realm. Of course, the 9 Radiance Divine Realm was merely one of the countless medium-sized powers in the Divine Dimension, and the master of the 9 Radiance Divine Realm was even an extraordinary expert at the Overgod Realm. These matters were too distant for the current Yixian. Good wine, it really is good wine. The wine of the God Realm is really different. It's a pity that it contains too much energy. I have to think of a way to dilute it so that my family can taste it. Yes, I also have to give some to Blackhorn Old Tree and the others." Yixian put down his wine cup, and a faint smile hung on his face. However, in the next moment his eyes narrowed, and he casually slapped someone to the side. As it turned out, Qikong and the others had already come to Yixian's side. However, Qikong was attracted by Yixian's God Slayer. Of course, this was also Yixian's fault. He just had to show off the God Slayer outside, and it was impossible for him not to be noticed. Therefore, one of Qikong's followers understood and prepared to directly snatch the sword, which led to the scene of Yixian casually slapping him. That follower had the cultivation of a first-grade upper true god. When he saw that Yixian was only a mid-grade true god, he naturally looked down on him. However, he didn't expect that before he could even touch the Godslayer, he would be slapped by Yixian first. If not for his divine power automatically protecting his body, this slap would have sent him flying. "How dare you hit me?" The follower looked at Yi Xian in shock. In his eyes, Yi Xian was only a mid-grade true god. How would he dare to resist them? Unexpectedly, Yi Xian really did hit him. Therefore, for a moment he didn't react. So what if I hit you? Even if I kill you, it's your own fault. Yi Xian casually held the Godslayer in his hand, and then looked at the 4 people in front of him. 1 low-level heavenly god, 2 high-level true gods, and 1 peak mid-level true god. The strength of these people seemed to be very strong. Yi Xian was secretly vigilant. However, other than offending the myriad beasts' divine sect, he didn't seem to have any conflicts with anyone. Why would someone come looking for trouble with him? A mere mid-grade true god's cultivation was at the bottom of the divine world. Yi Xian didn't expect that someone would come looking for him just for a meal. How unlucky. Aha, brat, you sure talk big. You want to kill me? You? A mere mid-grade true god dares to threaten to kill me? I think you're the one who's looking for death. When the follower heard Yi Xian's words, he was immediately happy. He knew very well that they came looking for Yi Xian to cause trouble, so he wasn't afraid of causing trouble. This was what the young master ordered, so of course he didn't care. At this time, when he heard Yi Xian's threat, he laughed out loud. However, he seemed to have forgotten that he was slapped by Yi Xian just now. Yi Xian didn't pay attention to him. Instead, he picked up the cup of wine on the table and drank it again, savoring the endless delicious taste. When the follower saw that Yi Xian was ignoring him, he secretly looked at Qi Kong. When he saw Qi Kong nodding, the follower didn't hesitate anymore and directly grabbed at Yi Xian. Brat, you're the one who's looking for death. Then let me fulfill your wish. This grab wasn't as simple as just grabbing. It went straight for Yi Xian's head. He was prepared to take Yi Xian's life. Although it was Yi Xian's first time in the realm of the gods, he knew that it was best not to make enemies. However, since he was being bullied, there was no need to tolerate it. In an instant, Yi Xian also made his move. Deity Vanquishing Slash. Boom! Yi Xian's attack was incomparably fast. So what if you're a high-grade true god? In front of the Deity Vanquishing Slash, under the Deity Vanquishing Slash, there was no need to think about taking advantage of him. After a loud bang, the slash actually had the effect of a critical hit. This high-grade true god was just a rank 1 high-grade true god. In addition, he wasn't prepared. How could he resist? He was actually killed by Yi Xian's slash. Yi Xian was slightly stunned. In fact, although he wasn't afraid of these people, he didn't intend to make a big conflict. Chapter 21-22. What the hell was going on? Great, there was no room for negotiation. However, since he had already killed someone, Yi Xian might as well go all the way. He casually put the follower's corpse and his interspatial ring into his devouring space. Of course, Yi Xian wouldn't choose to break through at this time. At the very least, unless he had no other choice, he wouldn't break through. After all, the requirements of the endless refinement were there. If Yi Xian were to break through now, then the difficulty of the endless refinement would increase when he returned. In that case, Yi Xian would not be able to achieve anything by coming here. How dare you kill someone? Seeing that Yi Xian had actually killed his companion the moment he made a move, Qi Kong was also extremely astonished. The key point was that Yi Xian was only an intermediate god. Qi Kong even had a feeling that even if he were to face that sword, he would not have the slightest chance of dodging it. That sword strike was simply too dazzling. At this time, there were still some diners in the inn. However, when they saw the conflict between Yi Xian and Qi Kong, they immediately turned around and left. Yi Xian did not know who Qi Kong and the others were, but the diners did. Qi Kong was the personal bodyguard of the young master of the Endless Treasures Pavilion, the strongest faction in the city. He was not someone the diners could afford to offend. They did not even dare to stay to watch the battle. Of course, they were also very curious as to who had the guts to provoke the people of the Endless Treasures Pavilion. One had to know that the Endless Treasures Pavilion existed in the form of a family. In other words, the young master of this pavilion was also a member of the main family. His background was extremely powerful. You have seen whether I dare to kill or not. Why? Do you also want to test if my sword is sharp enough? Yi Xian looked at Qi Kong indifferently. Since the conflict had erupted, there was no point in saying anything more. Humph kid, do you know who we are? I don't care who you are. Did you ask me if you want to touch my sword? How dare you? Don't think that we won't dare to kill you just because you are related to Lingxian Pavilion. To our young master, killing you is just like killing an ant. Qi Kang's words made Yixian raise his eyebrows slightly. It seemed like there was someone behind this guy. Oh, young master? So you are just a dog. Then let your young master come over and talk. I don't want to waste my breath on a dog. What did you say? Qi Kang was enraged. An incomparably powerful aura erupted from his body. The pressure of a heavenly god realm powerhouse suddenly erupted. No matter what, he was still a heavenly god realm expert, yet he was actually scolded like a dog by a mid-level true god. If it was anyone else, they would find it hard to accept. The example of challenging someone of a higher realm was obvious, so this was not the first time that the surrounding people had seen a true god mocking a heavenly god. Just as Qi Kang was about to make a move, a voice made him stop what he was doing. Yes, it was the young master who had walked over. The young master had only wanted Qi Kang to test Yixian's background. Who would have thought that Yixian would kill someone without a word? Furthermore, he had killed a superior deity with his mid-level deity cultivation. This was secondary. The main thing was that Yixian had inadvertently revealed his Supreme Elder's token when he killed that person. The Supreme Elder of Lingxian Pavilion wasn't someone to be trifled with. It could be said that the power behind Yixian was stronger than the young masters. It should be known that the elder who controlled a branch was only an ordinary elder, while the Supreme Elder was an existence equivalent to the regional supervising elder. Therefore, when the young master saw Yixian's token, his heart skipped a beat. Although he did want to cause trouble for the people of Lingxian Pavilion, offending a Supreme Elder of Lingxian Pavilion? At least for now, the young master didn't have the guts to do so. The young master walked over to Yixian and cupped his fists slightly. His etiquette was very perfunctory. Of course, if it had been someone close to Yixian who had been killed, Yixian probably wouldn't have been able to tolerate it. I am Hongming Xiaokei from Jubao Pavilion. How should I address you? The Hongming family. It was the family that controlled Jubao Pavilion. Are you the owner of this dog? Yixian asked indifferently as he pointed at Qi Kang casually. Qi Kang was so angry that his whole body was trembling. However, he didn't dare act presumptuously in front of Hongmeng Xiao Quebec. He could only stare coldly at Yixian. Yes, I am his master. Since you are from Lingxian Pavilion, why are you in a restaurant run by Jubao Pavilion? Why? Are you trying to stir up trouble? Although Hongmeng Xiaokei was wary of Yixian's identity, that didn't mean that he was afraid of Yixian. After all, Yixian was only a mid-level true god. If he hadn't had that token, he would have been worse than an ant in front of Hongmeng Xiao Quebec. Oh, does this restaurant belong to your family? However, even if that's the case, why can't I come in when your restaurant is open for business? I don't think I see a sign outside your restaurant that says that people from Lingxian Pavilion are not allowed to enter, right? As Yixian spoke, he was once again extremely curious about the Supreme Elder's token that Master Moonless had left for him. It seemed that this token had a lot of uses, and the authority it represented was also extremely great. Alright, there really isn't one. Hongmeng Xiaokei was slightly taken aback by Yixian's words, but he didn't refute. Although the Lingxian Pavilion and the Treasure Gathering Pavilion were competitors and would fight in the open and in the dark, they didn't say that it was on the surface. Yixian's question was indeed something that made Hongmeng Kei not know how to answer. Since that's the case, I'm eating in your restaurant. Logically speaking, I'm your guest. However, your dog bit your guest. Instead of keeping your dog in check, you came to find trouble with me, your guest. This doesn't seem right, does it? Yixian lightly smiled. The corners of his mouth were obviously filled with ridicule. He wanted to see what this bullshit young master could do. Of course, Yixian was already prepared. If the other party really wanted to make a move, Yixian would immediately run away. After all, Yixian couldn't beat these people. Alright, we'll admit that we were unreasonable today. Manager, put his bill on me. Let's go. Was Hongmeng Xiaokei admitting defeat? Yixian looked at Hongmeng Xiaokei in astonishment, but he was slightly wary. In fact, a barking dog wouldn't bite, but a silent dog would bite very viciously. It was obvious that Hongmeng Xiaokei belonged to the latter category. In other words, Yixian's troubles had only just begun. Sure enough, as soon as Hongmeng Xiaokei left the restaurant, he immediately ordered Qi Kang. Go and find this guy. Go investigate this brat's background for me. Humph, daring to offend this young master. I want him to die without even knowing how. Chapter 21-23. It turned out that the reason Hongmeng Xiaoke hadn't made a move earlier was because he was afraid of Yi Xian's token. Since someone was footing the bill, Yi Xian naturally wouldn't stand on ceremony. He immediately ordered all the best ingredients in the restaurant. So what if he couldn't finish them? Who cared if he could finish them? In any case, Yi Xian didn't have to pay for them himself. In 3 days, Yi Xian had spent a total of more than 300,000 divine crystals. Not only did this guy eat by himself, but he also invited anyone who entered the restaurant to eat with him. The restaurant owner's face had turned white from Yi Xian's eating. Unfortunately, he couldn't do anything about it. As for Hongmeng Xiaoke's expression when he saw the bill, Yi Xian couldn't care less. Meanwhile, Yi Xian had already arrived at Lingxian Court's internal auction. Grand Supreme Elder, you're finally here. Please follow me. I've already prepared a VIP room for you. Why? Are you guys not going to hold the auction if I'm not here? Elder Xiaobai smiled awkwardly but didn't say anything. However, Yi Xian was right. Elder Xiaobai really wouldn't have dared to hold the auction if he hadn't been here. In fact, he had already arrived at the area's supervising elder. The area's supervising elder had only one message for him. Use all means possible to serve Elder Yi Xian well. Also, try your best to keep him here until we arrive. To put it bluntly, no matter what method Elder Xiaobai used, he had to leave Yi Xian behind. He absolutely couldn't make Yi Xian unhappy. Although Elder Xiaobai didn't know the exact reason, he was very sure that Yi Xian's current status was no longer as simple as a Grand Supreme Elder. Elder Xiaobai summoned a beautiful attendant and led Yi Xian to the private room. Then, he immediately returned to his own room and released a signal. Supervising Elder, Yi Xian is already here for the auction. Please come over quickly. Grand Supreme Elder Yi Xian might leave after the auction is over. This news spread out at an extremely fast speed. At the same time, a group of powerhouses was flying towards the pavilion where Elder Xiaobai was. Among them was Master Moonless. However, it seemed like Master Moonless was only an attendant this time. When Yi Xian finally entered the private room, the auctioneer on the stage finally received the news and heaved a sigh of relief. In fact, Lingxian Pavilion's internal auction usually didn't have a fixed time. As long as all the invited guests were present, the auction would begin. Sometimes, as long as the main invited guests were present, the auction would begin. After all, this was not a formal auction. It was just an internal auction. However, it was only the Grand Supreme Elders present. Only Yi Xian's not. It would have been fine if Elder Xiaobai hadn't received the message from the supervising elder, but Elder Xiaobai had received it. Thus, he could only helplessly ask the master to think of a way to stall for time. 2 hours? It wasn't a big deal for the Sky Celestial powerhouses present, but they couldn't just wait for no reason. Hence, the auctioneer used all his tricks to stall for time. He finally heaved a sigh of relief when Yi Xian arrived. Hee. Since everyone can't wait any longer, I won't waste any more of your time. Let's officially start the auction. The auctioneer was extremely excited. He could finally start normally. He couldn't wait to shoot everything in one go and end it quickly. However, at that moment, Elder Xiaobai's voice rang in his ears. Try to delay the auction as much as possible, especially the item that the Grand Supreme Elder wants. It must appear at the latest. However, you must not anger the Grand Supreme Elder. Yes, that was all he said. The auctioneer was so angry that he almost vomited blood. What was going on? They were trying to stall for time again. More importantly, they couldn't anger the Grand Supreme Elder. They still had to get the item that the Grand Supreme Elder wanted. Yi Xian wanted the mystical water blaze stone, of course. Although the mystical water blaze stone was a precious treasure to Yi Xian, it was only a medium-grade item in this auction. It was best to leave a medium-grade treasure behind without angering the Grand Supreme Elder. This auction was really testing the auctioneer's skills. The auctioneer was helpless. He could only explain the uses and functions of each item in detail. This way it would be really troublesome and long. This kind of behavior undoubtedly caused the other people who were invited to complain. Fortunately, Yi Xian was new to the divine realm and didn't know many things. Hence, when the auctioneer introduced the items, Yixian listened with great interest. Of course, as long as Yixian was satisfied, Elder Xiaobai and the others could rest assured. As for the others, forget it. Even if they offended everyone here, they couldn't afford to offend Yixian. The next item is called the Six Suns Stone. That's right, the Six Suns Stone is one of the essential materials for body tempering below the heavenly god realm. Adding the Six Suns Stone to the body will make one's physique stronger. What the hell? Who doesn't know about the Six Suns Stone? What's wrong with the auctioneer today? He even has to introduce the Six Suns Stone like this. The crowd in the hall was discussing animatedly. Isn't that so? Do we need the auctioneer to teach us how to use the Six Suns Stone? Which one of us doesn't have a few formulas related to the Six Suns Stone? I think the auctioneer can forget about his job after this auction. He's dragging it out too much. As a veteran auctioneer, the auctioneer's expression changed when he heard this. However, at this moment, a voice rang out. Oh, Six Suns 3 Hearts Soup? There's such a method of body tempering? Then what other materials do we need? To be able to ask such a question, it was undoubtedly Yixian. When the auctioneer heard Yixian's voice, he immediately became interested. Not only did he begin to explain in detail, he even explained the rest of the materials, where to get them, how to use them for the best effect, and so on. Yixian listened with great interest. As for the others, they were getting impatient. However, the sharper ones had already noticed something unusual. Who's in that private room? Do you know? Chapter 21-24. Countless eyes were focused on the room Yixian was in. Their hearts were filled with questions. Finally, Master Moonless and the supervising elder of the area finally arrived at the pavilion after traveling at full speed. The auctioneer heaved a huge sigh of relief. There was no need to delay any longer. However, there were only a few items left in his hands. Without hesitation, he shouted out the item that Yixian wanted the most. The Mystical Water Blazing Stone. The next item is called the Mystical Water Blazing Stone. The starting price is 100,000 divine crystals. Each increment must not be lower than 10,000. Alright, let the auction begin. I bid 150,000. This item is actually being auctioned now. Could it be that this mystical water blazing stone has become a valuable treasure? I bid 200,000. Anyway, that's all I can offer. I don't know what the auctioneer is doing. He actually put this item as the finale item. What a waste of time. That's right, that's right. Who wants it? Hurry up and take it. It's annoying just looking at it. Yixian finally got what he wanted. Hence, without hesitation, he shouted out the price. I bid 500,000. To be honest, this item might be ordinary to others, but to Yixian it was a rare item. 500,000? In fact, it was definitely not worth that much. Normally, it could even go up to 2 million, much less 500,000. However, the crowd was already in a mess. Who would care so much? Someone was about to bid, but was pulled back by someone beside him. Forget it, just give it to him. It's not like it's anything good. Look at him, he really wants it. Furthermore, don't forget that he's in the Divine Room 1. How could he have gotten it so easily? Even Yixian himself did not expect it to be so easy. It was not that Yixian did not participate in the bidding for the ancient demon finger. However, the competition was so fierce that Yixian gave up. Who would have thought that it would be so easy for the mystical water blazing stone to get it? Alright, 500,000. No one else is bidding. Then congratulations to this young master for winning the auction. Weren't there 3 more people asking for the price? This film master was really interesting. Of course, this was a good thing for Yixian, so Yixian did not reject it. Just as the shoot ended, someone knocked on Yixian's door. Supreme Elder, may I come in? It was Elder Xiaobai's voice. Yixian smiled. He had made a profit this time, so he was naturally in a good mood, so he said directly, "Come in. Grand Elder. A friend of yours is waiting for you in the inner hall. Please follow me." After Elder Xiaobai came over, she didn't waste any time and directly said to Yixian, "My friend?" Yixian was slightly taken aback. He didn't seem to have any friends in the God realm. What was going on? Could it be that Hongmeng Xiaoke? However, even if Hongmeng Xiaoke came to find him, it shouldn't be in the capacity of a friend. Yixian frowned slightly and asked, "Who is my friend?" Supreme Elder, you'll know when you get there. Haha, Supreme Elder, please follow me. Xiaobai had a respectful smile on her face, but it was obvious that this time, there was even a hint of flattery. Although Yixian didn't know what was going on, he wanted to see who exactly Elder Xiaobai's most feared friend was. Soon Yixian arrived at the inner hall of the Lingxian Pavilion branch. The person who walked over made Yixian's heart skip a beat. The main character was here. Yes, it was the owner of the Grand Elder's token, Master Moonless. Could it be that he had used the badge of the Great Elder to participate in the auction, and had even gotten Master Moonless out of it? Yixian looked at Moonless rather awkwardly. Of course there were others as well. Master Yi, haha, it really is you. Master Yi, I didn't expect it to be you. Master Moonless was extremely excited. However, it made Yixian rather uncomfortable. What was in this guy's mind? Did he have to be so excited? Vice Pavilion Master, that's right. This is Yixian, Master Yi. My little life, as well as the people who were trapped there with me, was all thanks to Master Ye's help that we were able to leave. Master Moonless said respectfully to the person behind him. However, Yixian couldn't even see through that person's cultivation level. When Yixian asked for help from the system, the answer he got was, "Ding! System notification. Target's cultivation level is too high. Temporarily unable to detect." Yixian was slightly stunned. Damn, his cultivation level was so high that even the system couldn't detect it. What the hell, what kind of cultivation level was this person? Just as Yixian was sizing up the Deputy Pavilion Master, the Deputy Pavilion Master was also sizing up Yixian. You are Yixian? Facing such a powerful person, Yixian didn't dare to be disrespectful. He quickly bowed slightly and answered, "Yes, I am Yixian. Not bad, not bad. You're indeed young and promising. By the way, what stage are you in now?" Trials? He actually knew about the trials. However, Yixian glanced at Master Moonless and understood why this person knew about them. I've just received the title of the Endless Refiner in the beginner trial. I'm temporarily out and preparing to go again after some time. Yixian didn't hide anything and answered directly. Obviously, that person's body stiffened when he heard this. Then, he stared at Yixian as if he wanted to see through Yixian. Good, good, good. You're indeed young and promising. Then continue to work hard. Yixian was a little confused by the Deputy Pavilion Master's words. What was happening now was beyond Yixian's expectations. He didn't even understand what was going on. However, after the Deputy Pavilion Master finished speaking, he didn't continue speaking. Instead, Master Moonless ran over to Yixian. Haha, Grandmaster Yi, I'll have to trouble you this time. Here. This is the new identity token that Lingxian Pavilion has prepared for you. You'd better return my token to me. Otherwise, I won't be able to command my former subordinates. Master Moonless lightly smiled as he handed over a purple token to Yixian. There were only 2 words on the token. Lingxian. After all, the Grand Supreme Elder's token belonged to Master Moonless. Since Master Moonless had asked for it back, Yixian naturally couldn't keep it. Therefore, he didn't hesitate and directly handed the Grand Supreme Elder's token to Master Moonless. Chapter 21-25. However, Yixian did not reach out to take the token because he still did not understand what was going on. However, Master Ku seemed to be prepared. He directly stuffed the token into Yixian's hands and retreated to the side. Yixian was stunned. No, Master Ku, what do you mean by this? However, Master Ku only smiled mysteriously. Then everyone from Lingxian Pavilion, including Elder Xiaobai, instantly knelt in front of Yixian. Greetings, Pavilion Guardian Elder. What the hell? How did he become a Pavilion Guardian Elder? Moreover, it seemed that this Pavilion Guardian Elder was even more awesome than the Grand Supreme Elder. What was going on? Yixian was stunned and looked directly at Master Ku. Master Ku naturally understood what Yixian wanted to ask. Therefore, he did not beat around the bush and directly replied, Haha, Master Yi, just accept it. Do you know what my identity is in Lingxian Pavilion? Yixian was stunned. Wasn't he just the Grand Supreme Elder? What other identity could he have? However, before Yixian could answer, Master Ku directly replied, Master Yi, perhaps you don't know other things, but I was trapped there for countless years. You should know this, right? In fact, other than my status as a Grand Elder, I am also the younger brother of the Lingxian Court's Pavilion Master. Tell me you saved his younger brother. As the elder brother, how could the Pavilion Master not appreciate it? Therefore, it's better for you to accept this Pavilion Guardian Elder token. After all, one of the 4 Pavilion Guardian Elders of Lingxian Pavilion has already passed away after entering another mystery land. Another Pavilion Guardian Elder has also passed away due to exhaustion of his divine power. Lingxian Pavilion only has 2 Pavilion Guardian Elders now. Of course, Master Yi, you don't have to doubt it. You are in charge of Restriction Pavilion. To be honest, you are the only Pavilion Guardian Elder in Restriction Pavilion. As for the other elders or disciples under you, there is not a single one. It wasn't until Master Moonless finished speaking that Yi Xian realized that Lingxian Pavilion was trying to rope him in. Although he had only been given an empty shell, in reality, the benefits contained within this token were already boundless. Should Yi Xian refuse? How was that possible? As long as Yi Xian wasn't that stupid, he wouldn't refuse. In fact, he didn't have anything right now. If he could find a backer, it would be very beneficial for him. Although he did not know why Lingxian Pavilion valued him so much, he believed that it was not simply because Master Moonless was the younger brother of their Pavilion Master. But what did this have to do with Yi Xian? If there were benefits to be had, then let's take them. Alright, since I don't belong to any sect now, it would be impolite to decline. Yi Xian replied. His answer instantly made everyone smile, including the Vice Pavilion Master. Of course, although Yi Xian had become Lingxian Pavilion's Pavilion Guardian Elder, he did not even know what kind of power Lingxian Pavilion was. All he knew was that Lingxian Pavilion was an auction. As for the Pavilion Guardian Elder token in Yi Xian's hand, Yi Xian had merely treated it as a token that could give him a huge discount when he bought things. Yi Xian's participation was unavoidable, so Lingxian Pavilion had to hold a banquet. This banquet lasted for 7 whole days. A banquet that lasted for 7 days was considered strange. After the Vice Pavilion Master, Master Moonless, and the others left, Yi Xian still felt like he was in a dream. This time, no matter what, Yi Xian had picked up a huge bargain. Of course, this was also the so-called karma. If Yi Xian had not saved Master Moonless and the others at the first stage of the Valley of Despair, today's events would not have happened. After sorting out his emotions, Yi Xian would be a waste not to use his special privileges. He immediately asked Elder Xiaobai to get him a large amount of body tempering materials. This time he was prepared to temper his body properly so that he could attempt the endless trials again. Of course, Yi Xian still had to pay for these things from his own pocket. Therefore, he had used up all the millions of divine crystals that he had painstakingly obtained. However, the items that he had obtained could be considered generous. If he wanted to upgrade the 100-beast sword servant, he would need to devour points. At the moment, Yi Xian only had 2 devour points. There were very few things that he could do. For now, he could either upgrade the 100-beast sword servant or the battle god mount. After Yi Xian had broken through to the godly state, he had also summoned divine beast mounts. Therefore, the battle god mount could also be called a god grade mount. Due to a system error, the god grade mount had regressed to a silver grade mount. If it could be upgraded to a gold grade mount, its battle strength would undoubtedly increase by a lot. However, if Yi Xian chose to upgrade the 100-beast sword servant, it would be very useful. As previously mentioned, the mystical firestone could increase the toughness of the 100-beast sword servant. Then what exactly did it reflect on? For example, the cooldown of the summons. If he upgraded the battle god mount, then Yi Xian would be able to obtain enough strength in one go. On the other hand, if he upgraded the 100-beast sword servant, then Yi Xian would be able to summon more mounts in a short period of time. 2 choices, 2 conflicting choices. However, considering the needs of the trial, Yi Xian finally decided to upgrade the 100-beast sword servant. System. I want to use Devour points and the mystical firestone to upgrade the 100-beast sword servant. Ding! Host has used the mystical firestone and consumed 2 Devour points to upgrade the 100-beast sword servant. Ding! The resurrection time of the 100-beast sword servant has been reduced by half. The cooldown of the 100-beast sword servant's ultimate move, 100 Beasts Parade, has been reduced by half. Following the system notification, a satisfied smile appeared on Yi Xian's face. All his efforts had not been in vain. Finally, there was a return on investment. Reducing the cooldown by half meant that Yi Xian could use the 100B sword servant once every half a day. In that case, how useful would it be? The mechanism of the endless trial was to continuously strengthen the monsters, with each level stronger than the one before, until there were 1,000 monsters. Now that the cooldown of Yi Xian's 100B sword servant had been reduced, it meant that as long as Yi Xian controlled the speed of the trial, then he would be able to conserve a lot of energy each time he faced the strongest wave of 1,000 monsters. This undoubtedly increased Yi Xian's chances of passing the endless trial by many times. This was the result that Yi Xian wanted. Of course, apart from upgrading the 100B sword servant, the other items that Yi Xian had obtained were not completely useless. This time, the materials that Yi Xian had obtained were for refining the body. Furthermore, they could stimulate the potential of both the Sword God bloodline and the Battle God bloodline at the same time. Don't look at how this medicinal soup was something that Yi Xian had only exchanged for with divine crystals. However, it was extremely useful to Yi Xian. After soaking in the wooden barrel for an entire day as if he was taking a bath, Yi Xian finally absorbed all of the medicinal effects of the medicinal liquid. Ding! Host's Sword God bloodline has grown. Ding! Host's Battle God bloodline has grown. Ding! Host's battle strength has increased. Following the system notification, Yi Xian nodded slightly. Alright, the results were all within Yi Xian's grasp. There was even a pleasant surprise. Chapter 21-26. Yi Xian immediately took out a designated teleportation talisman, which was given to him by the Guardian. After crushing it, he would be able to return to the endless trials. With a slight force in his hand, he crushed the teleportation talisman. In an instant, a mysterious array appeared under his feet. Then, in the blink of an eye, his figure disappeared. When Yi Xian opened his eyes again, he was already in the teleportation pavilion. You're here. Are you ready to continue the trial? The Guardian's voice sounded. Yi Xian could not see where he was, but the voice seemed to indicate that the Guardian had been staring at Yi Xian. Yes, I'm ready. Good, then you can go to the next level. I don't think I need to explain the rules. This time it's the same. Before you obtain the title of Intermediate Trial Taker, you're not allowed to leave. Do you understand? Yes, I understand. Yi Xian nodded. Of course he understood the rules here. The Guardian's voice did not sound again, and Yi Xian walked to the next level. It seemed that after the challenge, even the opponent had changed. This time his opponent was still a divine beast, a monster of the devil ape type with 6 arms. Yi Xian did not know what its name was, so he just called it the 6 arms devil ape. The 6 arms devil ape had extremely fast speed. At the same time, each of its 6 arms held 6 different magic treasures. There were no more and no less 3 offensive and 3 defensive treasures. On this level, Yi Xian was only facing 1, and its cultivation level was only at the peak intermediate true god realm. Therefore, this was the opportunity for Yi Xian to understand the 6 arms devil ape. He took a step forward and left the staircase. In an instant, the 6 arms devil ape sensed him. Roar! Roar! The 6 arms devil ape roared. At the same time, a bowl-shaped magic treasure in its hand emitted a strong light and attacked Yi Xian. What a strong pressure. This light seems to be used to suppress my movement. Moreover, this kind of strength is just right for a peak mid-true god to possess. Yi Xian silently analyzed in his heart. Of course, such a strong pressure wouldn't affect Yi Xian too much. However, even so, Yi Xian did not immediately kill the 6 arms demon ape. Instead, he quietly waited for the 6 arms demon ape to attack. The main purpose of choosing this level was to first grasp the strength of the 6 arms demon ape, so that it would be more convenient for the later battles. The 6 arms demon ape didn't seem to have much intelligence. After the first attack was launched, the second attack was launched almost instantly. It was still a ray of light, but it was condensed together. Furthermore, the light this time around was no longer as simple as oppressive might. Instead, it had turned into a truly powerful attack. Corrosive ability? No, in addition to corrosion, it also has the ice attribute. This attack can slow down my movement speed and corrode my divine power. Yi Xian felt it slightly and already knew the effect of this attack. In that case, I can't say that I'll be delayed for too long in the later stages. After all, once the 6 arms demon ape is formed, This kind of attack will become a huge test. Yi Xian frowned slightly. However, he was thinking about the test in the later stages. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you'll never be defeated. This wasn't because Yi Xian was a coward. This was the realm of the gods. Even if it was just a trial monster, Yi Xian had never seen it before. Therefore, Yi Xian had to familiarize himself with these monsters. Not only because of this place but also because of the entire realm of the gods. Now, Yi Xian was continuously accumulating experience. Very quickly, the 6 arms demon ape's attack methods were completely understood by Yi Xian. Now it was time to test this fellow's defensive methods. The 100 Beast Sword Attendant had to be used at the 1000 Beast level. Megatron could be used but not now. Therefore, Yi Xian still only pulled out the Godslayer and attacked the 6 arms demon ape. Eat my sword. This time Yi Xian only used a normal attack. Unexpectedly, the 6 arms demon ape waved its hand casually and used a long sword to block Yi Xian's attack. Not bad, not bad. Although I didn't use the Godslayer's skill to attack this time, I used 80% of my strength. It seems that this fellow's strength isn't as weak as it looks. Alright, now it's time to start the slaughter. Yi Xian felt that he had grasped the 6 arms demon ape's general ability, so he didn't hesitate. The Godslayer released a burst of intense light. Yi Xian had already made his move. Deicide slash. Boom! The critical hit effect appeared. Although it didn't kill in one hit, the effect of 10 times the critical hit was no different from killing in one hit. In an instant, the 6 arms demon ape in front of Yi Xian was killed, turning into a ray of white light and disappearing. Yi Xian didn't hesitate and directly stepped onto the next level. It could be said that after understanding the strength of the 6 arms demon ape, even though it was clearly at a higher level than Yi Xian, it couldn't stop Yi Xian's advance at all. In front of Yi Xian, the 6 arms demon apes were killed one by one, and Yi Xian's advance became firmer and firmer. Have I reached the last level of the Peak True God stage? At this time, Yi Xian stood at the top of the stairs and looked at the densely packed 6 arms demon apes in front of him. 1,000, such a large number. However, what was the use? Could it be that he wanted to rely on these 6 arms demon apes to stop Yi Xian's advance? 100 Beast Sword Attendant, come out for me. Yi Xian finally used his trump card. As soon as he summoned the 100 Beast Sword Attendant, he didn't hesitate and directly let the 100 Beast Sword Attendant use the 100 Beasts Walk, summoning 100 divine mounts at the same time. In an instant, 100 silver-level divine mounts appeared and pounced on the 6 arms demon apes without hesitation. Unfortunately, Yi Xian was unlucky this time. Among the 100 divine mounts, there wasn't a single gold-level divine mount. There wasn't even a single gold-level divine mount, let alone a platinum level one. This is interesting. This little guy still has such a trump card. Suddenly, the voice of the gatekeeper was heard. This voice made Yi Xian's body stiffen slightly. The gatekeeper was definitely a super existence that Yi Xian couldn't defeat. However, when he was trying to break through the levels, the gatekeeper had never interfered with him. But now, why did he suddenly speak? Could it be that external forces weren't allowed here? Yi Xian was puzzled, but he didn't ask. However, the gatekeeper seemed to have seen through Yi Xian's thoughts and directly said, "Young man, don't worry. The beasts you summoned can be considered as part of your own strength, so they are considered to be reasonable. I'm just a little curious about your beasts. When you obtain the Intermediate Endless Trials title, you can also obtain a reward. Young man, work hard. I have a reward that is very suitable for your current skill. If you can pass this test, then I'll give you this reward." Chapter 21-27. Yi Xian's heart skipped a beat. What did the Guardian mean? What did he mean by a reward that was suitable for his current skill? The skill that the Guardian was referring to was Yi Xian using the 100 Beast Sword Servant's ultimate move to summon 100 Silver-Grade Divine Beasts mounts. Then what was the reward that he was referring to? Of course, although Yi Xian was puzzled, he knew that he would be able to take advantage of the situation this time. As long as he could obtain the title of Intermediate Trial Taker, no matter what the Guardian was referring to, it would become Yi Xian's. Presumably, the Guardian would not tease Yi Xian. Then let's fight. Let's fight hard. No matter what the Guardian gave Yi Xian, all the rewards could only be obtained after Yi Xian obtained the title of Intermediate Trial Taker. Therefore, Yi Xian could only fight with all his might. The endless trial taker was called endless because it would not give you any time to rest. If you wanted to fight slowly and drag out the time, that was impossible because there was a time limit to the battle. If you wanted to end the battle quickly and use the free time to take a break, this was also impossible, because there was a limit to the amount of time that could pass after the battle had ended. Endless trial taker, endless slaughter. Yi Xian's eyes were bloodshot. He did not even know how many monsters he had killed with his own hands. Kill, endless slaughter. There was only battle, non-stop battle. Moreover, the higher he went, the stronger the monsters were. Fortunately, the god-slaying sword was able to effectively suppress these monsters, which was why Yi Xian wasn't in any danger along the way. Superior Grade 1 True God Pass. Superior Grade 5 True God Pass. Superior Grade Peak True God Pass. At this moment, Yi Xian was facing a first-grade Heavenly God opponent. A first-grade Heavenly God 6 Arms Demon Ape. Good lad, you're the first one I've met in 3 million years with such speed. What was the name of the last one who could maintain such speed? Oh right, I think it was Fei Yu or something. Not bad, not bad. Your performance is not bad. The voice of the Guardian sounded again. This time it was directly praising Yi Xian. This was a rare occurrence. Yi Xian didn't reply. He wasn't in the mood to do so right now. Ever since the start of the intermediate trial, Yi Xian had been challenging monsters of a higher level than him. In the previous level, he had even fought with 1,000 upper-class true gods. If Yi Xian were to say that he could easily defeat such a powerful opponent, it would be impossible. Even though the Godslayer was able to effectively suppress the monsters, with each strike being able to deal critical damage, and from time to time being able to kill in one hit, and with the addition of the 100 beast sword servants, the battle was still very difficult. Without mentioning anything else, this battle lasted for a full 5 days. Yi Xian even summoned the sword servants of the 100 beasts, a total of 10 times. It was obvious how difficult this battle was. In fact, not only was Yi Xian tired, but he was also injured all over. In the previous stage, Yi Xian had been in danger several times. He had almost lost his life a few times. Fortunately, the more serious his injuries were, the more the battle of the worlds increased. However, there was no end in sight to this battle. The endless trial, as its name suggested, was endless. Just the continuous appearance of opponents was enough to make those with weak willpower despair. Yi Xian's willpower wasn't weak, but that didn't mean that he was feeling good right now. At this time, Yi Xian even thought of giving up. Difficult. It was really too difficult. This endless refinement could be said to have allowed Yi Xian to experience what true endless was, what endless slaughter was. However, could Yi Xian give up? No, because this was part of the system repair mission. Yi Xian could only grit his teeth and continue. Furthermore, if others could complete the trial, why couldn't Yi Xian complete it? It was only the intermediate trial now. There were still advanced and even higher levels. Could it be that Yi Xian couldn't even pass the intermediate trial? No, Yi Xian didn't believe it. He didn't believe that he only had this much strength. Kill! Yi Xian suddenly roared. At this time, the 100 beast sword attendant and the divine mount were in cooldown. The withered bone sword attendant was useless. The same went for Wei Jintian. It was useless. Everything depended on Yi Xian. Roar! Roar! The 6 arms demon ape seemed to be very excited. With a wave of its hand, another powerful aura descended on Yi Xian. In just an instant, Yi Xian felt as if he was being suppressed by a mountain. He couldn't move an inch. Was this really a first-stage Heavenly God 6 arms demon ape? This was a super opponent that surpassed Yi Xian by 2 whole realms. Yi Xian was only a mere intermediate true god. Moreover, he was only a 4th-stage true god. Moreover, he had already gone through so many killings. He was already mentally and physically exhausted. Rewards, titles. Yi Xian couldn't care less about them now. Right now, he was just relying on his tenacious willpower to fight. Boom! A strong force came, and Yi Xian was sent flying by the 6 arms demon ape. There was blood at the corner of his mouth. At this time, Yi Xian felt as if all the bones in his body were about to shatter. He was so powerless and so tired. Was it going to end just like that? Could it be that he really couldn't pass? In fact, would he even die here? No, he couldn't. Yi Xian couldn't accept defeat. He couldn't accept defeat like this. At this time, his eyes suddenly opened. No, I won't admit defeat. So what if you're a heavenly god? Yixian will kill you all the same. Spiritual control. Suddenly, Yixian let out a loud roar. His divine sense suddenly condensed and attacked the six-arms demon ape at the heavenly god stage. Hoping to control the six-arms demon ape with spiritual control? That was almost impossible. In fact, not to mention the heavenly god stage six-arms demon ape, even before this, Yixian hadn't used this spiritual sense control. As for the reason was very simple. These monsters in the Tower of Trials weren't real entities. They were just illusionary projections. If they didn't even have a real body, how could they have a spirit? How could Yixian possibly think that he could subdue them with spiritual control? However, when Yixian's spiritual sense made a move, the result was beyond his expectations. He actually succeeded. Yixian was dumbfounded. At this time, he stared blankly at the six-arms demon ape that he had temporarily controlled. What was this? This thing had clearly disappeared with a puff of white smoke after it was killed. What? She could control him with her spiritual sense? It was over so easily. Yixian casually swung his sword and killed the six-arms demon ape without any suspense. However, Yixian felt as if he was dreaming. This was clearly the most difficult battle, but it had turned out to be the easiest battle. This made Yixian a little unable to react. Hey kid, you're just a mid-level true god. How could you have such a technique? Let me see. Spiritual control? Not the art of puppetry. Not spiritual control either. What's going on? As far as I know, very few people have mastered spiritual control. Moreover, it's impossible for anyone below the true god realm to master it. How did you do it? The gatekeeper suddenly spoke, startling Yixian from his daze. Chapter 21-28. Yixian had obtained this spiritual sense control through the system's skill fusion. How could he have known so much? At this moment, after hearing the guardian's words, he realized that this spiritual sense control actually had a great background. However, this could not explain the doubts in Yixian's heart. Why was spiritual sense control able to control the six-arms demon ape? However, in front of the guardian, Yixian certainly did not have the right to ask. In fact, even if he did ask, the guardian would simply ignore him. Alright kid. You've passed this level. Congratulations on obtaining the intermediate trial taker title. It seems that this ordinary endless trial is not a problem for you. I can only activate the special level. The guardian seemed to be muttering to himself in the latter half of his sentence. As for Yixian, he didn't know what he meant by that. After a moment, the guardian continued speaking. Kid, since the establishment of this endless tower, the special level has only been activated twice. And you are the third person to do so. I don't know if this is your good fortune or bad luck. You're on your own now. Oh right, by the way, let me tell you something. The first two people failed. If I had not stepped in to save them, they would not have been able to keep their lives. This time I am powerless to help you. You're on your own now. I'll teleport you over now. This time you will have 3 days to rest. Of course, you can choose to leave temporarily and come back to challenge in the future. After all, if you succeed in this challenge, you will directly obtain the unique Supreme Trial Taker title. Hearing this, Yixian could not help but frown. What kind of challenge would allow him to skip so many challenges and directly obtain the Supreme Trial Taker title? Furthermore, it was a unique title. In other words, the challenge this time was equivalent to directly clearing the trial tower? Yixian frowned and felt a little uneasy. Not to mention anything else, at least one thing was certain, and that was that the difficulty of this challenge was extremely high. It could even be said that it was several times more difficult than any of the challenges Yixian had faced before. However, at the same time, this was also an opportunity for Yixian, a rare opportunity. Of course, before the teleportation, Yixian did not forget what the gatekeeper had said. Gatekeeper, you said that you would give me a reward if I passed this level. What is the reward? Haha, brat, you actually still remember this matter? Do you know what you will obtain once you pass the sovereign level trial? You actually care about such a small reward. To you, it might be something insignificant, but to me it's not that simple. Being able to increase my strength by a bit is already enough for me. Yixian said calmly. Brat, you're quite direct. Alright, this reward is something you deserve anyway. So accept it. Suddenly, a ball of light emerged from the tower and appeared in front of Yixian. This is your reward. Next you can choose for yourself. I'll leave the portal here for you. You can enter whenever you want. I'm too lazy to set a time limit for you. After all, you're the only one who can challenge that place in a million years. I'll give you some special privileges. I'm sure that even if my master finds out, he won't say anything." The voice of the gatekeeper was filled with vicissitudes of life. Perhaps he was thinking of his master. Of course, this had nothing to do with Yixian. Yixian casually took the ball of light. The light quickly gathered in Yixian's hand. Not long after, it turned into a small box. This box was very exquisite. Both the material and the workmanship were exceptionally exquisite. Although Yixian did not know what it was, he knew that this box was definitely not simple. Ding! System notification. Discovered special material. Eternal Night Treasure Box. Ding! System notification. Discovered special material 1,000 souls. The two consecutive system prompts caused Yixian to be slightly stunned. Eternal Night Treasure Box? 1,000 souls? What are these things? System, appraise this Eternal Night Treasure Box in 1,000 souls. I want to see what this gatekeeper left for me. Yixian said to the system. Soon he heard the sound of the system successfully appraising. At the same time, the appearance of these two items was finally revealed to Yixian. Eternal Night Treasure Box. Special Treasure Box. Only one function. Eternal Night Preservation. The description was that simple. However, Yixian saw some clues from the word, Eternal Night. In fact, there were many different types of treasures. Their characteristics were also different. Among them, there were some treasures that could not see the slightest bit of light, and could not be affected by the outside world. Yixian remembered that he had heard of a magical material called the 10 Generations Wonder Flower. This flower was very strange. It appeared on a fixed day every year. Of course, the exact day was different for each flower. The time of appearance was fixed, but the location was not fixed. It could be in a forest, on a volcano, in the sky, in the sea, or even in the void. Such a magical item was very difficult to obtain. Not to mention the current Yixian, even the gods who were much more powerful than Yixian might not be able to obtain it. Of course, even if they obtained it, they might not be able to store it. This was because this item could not be tainted with the slightest bit of mortal aura. Even god power could not be tainted. Therefore, it was not easy to discover such a precious treasure. It was not certain whether one could obtain it after discovering it. Even if one obtained it, it would be useless without the means to store it. This Eternal Night Treasure Box was such a rare treasure. It could be said that Yixian had already profited greatly from this Eternal Night Treasure Box. Moreover, there was an even more important treasure inside. 1,000 souls. Yes, that was the name. 1,000 souls only had one attribute, and that was that it contained 1,000 blank god-level souls. What kind of concept was that? Yixian only thought about it for a moment before he was so shocked that he did not know what to say. Simply put, this guardian god was going to bestow god-level souls to Yixian's god-level mounts. Yixian's current god-level mounts were, frankly speaking, just beasts. Moreover, they were summoned at random. Strictly speaking, they were very unstable. However, if these 1,000 god-level souls were used to strengthen the mounts, what kind of effect would there be? This was already beyond Yixian's imagination. Perhaps he would only find out after the mounts were strengthened. Chapter 21-29. Ding! Attention host. Detected special materials that can be used for strengthening. The system has given 3 options. Host, please make your choice. Ding! Option 1. Host can use 1,000 souls to strengthen a god tier mount. 2 devour points are required to upgrade the god tier mount back to gold tier. Ding! Option 2. Host can use 1,000 souls to strengthen a 100 Beast Sword Servant. 3 Devour points are required to upgrade the 100 Beast Sword Servant to 1,000 Beast Sword Servant. Its ultimate move will be upgraded to 1,000 Beast Sword Servant. Host will be able to summon 1,000 God tier mounts at the same time. Ding! Option 3. Host can use 1,000 souls to strengthen a Withered Bone Sword Servant. Bestow a soul to the Withered Bone Sword Servant and upgrade it to a proper Sword Servant. Host will then obtain the Withered Bone Sword Servant's special abilities. Holy shit, that good? The system's notification made Yixian pleasantly surprised. It could be said that all 3 options were extremely beneficial to Yixian. Forget about the Withered Bone Sword Servant. It was purely a consumable item. He didn't know when he would be able to obtain the skeleton heart again, so strengthening it wouldn't be of much use. However, strengthening a god-tier mount and the 100-beast sword servant were two extremely good options. If he were to use it this time to strengthen the 100-beast sword servant, then the 100-beast sword servant would be too powerful. Previously, he had reduced the cooldown time. This time, he could strengthen the number of ultimate moves he could use. It could be said that at this rate, the 100-beast sword servant would become Yi Xian's #1 trump card. Of course, the 100-beast sword servant still needed a god-tier mount to be able to unleash its full potential. However, no matter which of the two options, both required devour points. It seemed that Yi Xian couldn't strengthen it for the time being. After all, the devourer beast wasn't something that could be easily encountered. What should he do? Should he challenge it now? Or should he accumulate his strength before challenging it? Yi Xian was caught in a dilemma. If he were to challenge that unknown trial now, the Guardian had made it clear that the trial was extremely powerful. It could be said that Yi Xian didn't have the slightest confidence in defeating it. Even if Yi Xian strengthened the 100-beast sword servant and his god-tier mount at the same time, he didn't have much confidence in defeating it. Yi Xian frowned slightly, thinking that this was a very good opportunity. Obviously, as long as he passed this trial, he would definitely be able to obtain unimaginable benefits. However, it seemed that his current strength was not enough. What should I do? I'm not willing to just give up. However, if I want to challenge that thing, then I won't even be able to increase my cultivation level. Moreover, I don't have the confidence to succeed. Yi Xian muttered to himself, or rather, the only one who could hear him was the system. However, what Yi Xian did not expect and was almost frightened out of his wits was that this time, the system took the initiative to issue a notification. Ding! The system has leveled up. Based on the host's current situation, the system recommends that the host continue to level up and strengthen his strength. Only when the host is at the peak of the superior deity can he challenge the host again. That's right, the system had given him a prompt. This was something that had never happened before. Yi Xian stood rooted to the ground. After the system made a mistake, it became more humane. And now this notification couldn't be more obvious. However, was this a good thing or a bad thing? Yi Xian didn't have any idea. It could be said that in Yi Xian's heart, the cold and emotionless system in the past was the system that he knew. Now that the system was slowly becoming more humane, he was a little dazed. However, no matter what, the system was still the system. No matter how it changed, it was still Yi Xian's system. Alright, I understand. Yi Xian said indifferently. Yi Xian understood the system's words. The peak of the superior deity could be said to be at the peak of the deity realm. However, Yi Xian still had to face the trial of the deity realm. This way, Yi Xian could indeed unleash his full strength. After thinking through the crux of the matter, Yi Xian seemed to have heaved a sigh of relief. It was as if a rock had been lifted from the ground. In that case, he would not challenge the final trial for now. He would go out and increase his strength first. Yi Xian made the final decision. He had wasted a lot of time in the Valley of Despair, and hadn't investigated Luo Luo's whereabouts. Speaking of which, it was Yi Xian's fault. Since he already had a designated teleportation talisman in the Valley of Despair, no matter where he was, he could quickly return here. This time, Yi Xian could continue to investigate Luo Luo's whereabouts and increase his strength at the same time. It wouldn't be too late to come back when he reached the peak of the deity realm. Yi Xian recovered his strength and injuries slightly at the thought of this, then walked out directly. When he entered, he had passed through many checkpoints. However, when he left, it wasn't that difficult. There wasn't even the slightest obstruction. Of course, this was excluding the law enforcement elder of the Divine Beast sect who was guarding outside. In fact, before Yi Xian came out, he didn't even consider this person. After all, he didn't have much of a conflict with Hao Bai of the Divine Beast sect. Furthermore, Yi Xian had stayed in the Valley of Despair for such a long time. Logically speaking, the law enforcement elder of the Divine Beast sect should have left by now. Unfortunately, this guy really didn't leave. Instead, he kept waiting outside for Yi Xian. Wasn't this just looking for trouble? With the strength of the Divine Beast sect, they naturally didn't know the secret of the Valley of Despair. In this person's heart, he felt that Yi Xian had most likely died in the Valley of Despair. However, since he felt that Yi Xian had died, Why did he keep waiting outside? Just how much hatred and resentment was there between them? Brat, you finally came out. I didn't waste my time waiting here for you for such a long time. The moment Yixian walked out, he was stopped by Hao Bai of the Divine Beast sect. Yes, it's been almost a year. I didn't expect you to still wait for me. Yixian frowned slightly as he looked at this guy. This guy really didn't give up easily. At the same time, Yixian said to the system in his heart, System, quickly, I need to urgently devour my previous gains. I need to break through quickly. Yixian's previous battles weren't without gains. The corpse of the ancient demon dragon, the Qiankuan ring of Li Lei, and the others were all great treasures. Therefore he still had a lot of gains. However, because of the Tower of Trials he didn't choose to break through. However, now that there was danger it wouldn't be right if he didn't break through. This was Hao Bai, the law enforcement elder of the Divine Beast sect. Just now a heavenly god six-arms demon ape had beaten Yixian until he couldn't do anything, let alone Hao Bai now. If he didn't break through now, was he going to wait for death? Ding, host breakthrough, current level 5 is medium true god. Ding, host breakthrough, current level 9 is medium true god. Holy *T, 5 levels in a row. Yixian actually achieved 5 levels in a row, from level 4 medium true god, directly to level 9 medium true god. This feeling was simply too good. It wasn't that Yixian felt good because he had achieved 5 levels in a row. After all, it wasn't like he hadn't done it before. In fact, what made Yixian feel the most good was that he hadn't leveled up so quickly in a long time. Level 9 Medium True God. Chapter 2130. At this moment Hao Bai was dumbfounded. The entire process of Yixian's breakthrough was under his eyes. It could be said that he clearly saw Yixian's breakthrough time and time again, his strength increasing time and time again. However, although Yixian broke through time and time again, he was still only a mid-true god in the end. He did not break through to the upper true god realm. As for Hao Bai, his cultivation was at the heavenly god realm, so he did not pay too much attention to it. Brat, I did not expect you to be hiding your strength. But so what? Why? A mere mid-true god wants to escape from my hands? Hao Bai looked at Yixian and said with disdain. He was the law-enforcing elder of the Wanshou divine sect. He had waited outside the Valley of Despair for so long just to confirm Yixian's death, and avenge the loss of the 16 totem beasts. 16 totem beasts, even for the Wanshou divine sect, that was a huge amount of wealth. It could be said that losing 16 totem beasts was a huge matter for the Wanshou divine sect. The reason why Hao Bai did not leave was because of this. Now that Yixian walked out of the Valley of Despair alive, Hao Bai was determined to kill him. You're quite patient. So what if you're a mid-true god? It's enough to kill you. Yixian looked at Hao Bai. Since he knew that this battle was unavoidable, then there was no need to talk nonsense. Even if he lost, he would not lose. He would never admit defeat. He directly pulled out the god-slaying sword and prepared to fight with all his strength. You're courting death. Seeing that Yixian dared to pull out his sword to fight against him, Hao Bai was furious. Being ignored by a mere mid-true god, how could he, the law-enforcing elder, have any face left? Hao Bai casually waved his hand and instantly condensed the illusion of a divine beast. He actually pounced towards Yixian in an instant. You think you're the only one who can summon a beast? You're too naive. Yixian also waved his hand, and the 100-beast sword attendant immediately appeared in front of him. Fortunately, Yixian had stayed in the Boundless Tower for a while. Coincidentally, the 100-beast sword servant's summoning cooldown had ended. Otherwise, he would have lost a helper. 100 Beasts Parade. As soon as the 100-beast sword servants appeared, they did not waste any time and immediately unleashed their ultimate skills. At the same time, Yixian also summoned 100 god-tier war god mounts. This time, he had the help of a gold-grade mount. In an instant, they were like a magnificent army charging towards Hao Bai. How is this possible? You actually have such a method? Hao Bai was greatly alarmed. Yixian's summoning methods were actually a level higher than his own. This was something that he found hard to accept. However, he was a heavenly god after all. How could his trump card be so limited? Very well. Since you want to compete in the summoning of the battle beasts, then this exalted shall let you know the strength of our 10,000 beasts divine sect today. Come out, my servants. Kill the enemy in front of you. Following Hao Bai's loud shout, with Hao Bai as the center, light continuously flashed. One after another, powerful divine beasts appeared. These were the divine beasts of the 10,000 Beasts Divine Sex Law Enforcement Team. Moreover, there were actually more than 1,000 of them. Boom! 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 Yi Xian's war god mount directly tangled with Hao Bai's 1,000 divine beasts. In an instant the sound was like thunder. Ignorant. The corner of Yi Xian's mouth slightly curled. This guy, did he not think that he was too simple? Did he really think that he was relying on these war god mounts? Kill! Yi Xian roared loudly. In an instant, his figure had already pounced towards Hao Bai. At the same time, the god-slaying sword in his hand suddenly swung out. God-slaying slash. Haha, is this all you have? You want to defeat me with this little bit of strength? Hao Bai only casually waved his hand and repelled Yi Xian's surprise attack this time. He even directly sent Yi Xian flying. The difference of a whole realm was not something that could be ignored just like that. Brat, eat my attack. Suddenly, Hao Bai's figure disappeared from his original position. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Yi Xian. Boom! One punch, just one punch, and Yi Xian was directly sent flying. Furthermore, if it wasn't for the god-slaying sword's defensive skill and the divine spirit shield that directly activated at the most crucial moment, Yi Xian might have been killed by this punch. However, even so, Yi Xian was still injured. As expected of a heavenly god realm expert, the divine spirit shield's defensive power could only be fully unleashed when Yi Xian had enough divine spirit fragments. However, at this time, Yi Xian did not obtain any divine spirit fragments at all. During the trial, Yi Xian killed countless monsters, but those did not give him any divine spirit fragments. Yi Xian was sent flying by this punch, his figure explosively retreating dozens of meters. Hao Bai did not continue to chase after him. After all, in his eyes, Yi Xian was not a threat at all. Yi Xian frowned. The difference in strength was still too big. However, this did not mean that Yi Xian did not have a chance. Luck, yes. At this time, Yi Xian could only gamble on his friend's luck. Spiritual sense control was not effective against this guy at all. Yi Xian was very clear on this point. Hao Bai was not the six-armed demon ape. Although they were both heavenly gods, in reality there was still a difference. The god-slaying slash had a chance to cause a critical hit. Moreover, within the critical hit effect, there was also a certain chance of a one-hit kill. If it was really a normal battle, Yi Xian would not be able to defeat the heavenly god Hao Bai. Therefore, Yi Xian could only place all of his hopes on the critical hit effect. God-slaying slash. God-slaying slash. Yi Xian did not care so much. In one breath, he unleashed 32 consecutive attacks. Of course, this was already the limit of Yi Xian's attacks in a short period of time. This move again? This sovereign has already said that it is useless. With your attack power, you cannot do anything to this sovereign. Hao Bai did not mind. Even if those attacks came to Hao Bai's side, he would casually wipe them away. They could not do anything to Hao Bai at all. Not bad. Seems that this attack is a bit interesting. Of course, the 32 attacks also caused several critical hits of tenfold damage. However, a critical hit of tenfold damage was not a threat to Hao Bai at all. This was because there was no difference between tenfold damage and onefold damage to Hao Bai. As for the reason, it was naturally because Yi Xian's cultivation level was too low. A mid-level true god challenging a heavenly god was an impossible task in itself. If Hao Bai did not deliberately want to toy with Yi Xian would have been defeated long ago. Was 32 attacks not enough? Then he would do it a bit more. Yi Xian clenched his teeth. Ignoring the exhaustion of his body and the exhaustion of his divine power, he once again swung the God-Slayer sword. It was still the God-slaying slash. Yi Xian used almost mechanical movements to continuously unleash one attack after another. Boring, truly boring. Brat, this sovereign does not have the time to play around with you. Since you cannot take out any moves that are worthy of this sovereign's attention, then you can go die. Hao Bai moved. He directly charged towards Yi Xian. This time he wanted to directly kill Yi Xian. Chapter 21:31. Hao Bai's figure moved and instantly pounced towards Yi Xian. Rays of light suddenly appeared in his hand. This was not an attack that a disciple of the divine sect of myriad beasts should have. This was because what he used was an extremely powerful space-type divine ability. Those rays of light seemed to have their own personalities. As they attacked, they constantly changed their positions. Yes, after the rays of light rushed out a certain distance, it was as if they were thrown into a transmission door. When they reappeared, they had already changed positions. What the hell? Yi Xian was incomparably astonished. What was this? How could there be such a powerful attack? How could one defend against such an attack? It could be said that Yi Xian had never seen such an attack. This kind of attack was simply out of Yi Xian's expectations. Not to mention seeing it, he had never even heard of it. In an instant, Yi Xian was completely surrounded by those rays of light. Those rays of light contained boundless power. Moreover, they were incomparably strange. Yi Xian could not react at all. Resist. He could only resist. Yi Xian actually could not dodge such an attack. Haha, brat, how is it? This sovereign shadowless divine light, do you like it? Shadowless divine light? What a terrible name. However, its power could not be underestimated. It could even be said to be extremely terrifying. Yi Xian continuously tried to charge out of these rays of light. However, it was futile. Every time Yi Xian clearly saw that there was an empty space in front of him, there were no rays of light blocking his path. However, as soon as Yi Xian moved, he would immediately be surrounded by dozens of rays of light. Damn it, truly damn it, Yi Xian softly said, venting the gloominess in his heart. However, even though he was softly speaking, Hao Bai still heard it. Haha, brat, does it feel good? Do you think this sovereign shadowless divine light is so simple? Enjoy it. You should feel honored to be able to die under this sovereign shadowless divine light. This could not go on. If this continued, then Yi Xian would definitely lose. Could even be said that he would die here. What should I do? Damn it, truly damn it. Although Yi Xian was anxious, he could not come up with an effective method. Of course, this did not mean that Yi Xian did not have a backup plan. For example, he could directly crush the designated teleportation talisman and return to the endless challenge. However, Yi Xian was unwilling to do so. He was unwilling to give up. Hao Bai had been waiting for Yi Xian for so long. Even if Yi Xian managed to hide now, what would he do next time? What would he do next time? Never place your hopes on others. You can only rely on yourself. I'll kill you. Suddenly, Yi Xian roared and made a decision that Hao Bai didn't expect. Yi Xian gave up on escaping and also gave up on defending. Instead, he focused all of his cultivation and divine power on the god-slaying sword. Die for me. Deity-slaying slash. Boom. A beam of sword light flew out from Yi Xian's hand, heading straight for Hao Bai. Hao Bai suddenly smiled. Brat, this move of yours cannot threaten this sovereign. Stop struggling and accept your death obediently. Perhaps that way you can suffer less. Hao Bai's expression was as if he already had Yi Xian in his grasp. Of course, under normal circumstances, Yi Xian would not have the slightest chance to resist. Unfortunately, there were always exceptions. Moreover, Yi Xian's deity-slaying slash had the effect of killing in one strike. Just as Hao Bai was incomparably pleased with himself, the delight on his face froze forever. Because he was already dead. No, to be precise, his body was already dead. His godhead was already shattered. However, he was a heavenly god after all. Of course, he wouldn't die so easily. The current Hao Bai, relying on his incomparably powerful divine power, actually allowed his soul to remain for a short period of time. He did not immediately die. Hao Bai's body suddenly fell down. However, at the place where he originally stood, an illusory figure was looking at Yi Xian in horror. Moreover, it was continuously saying the same thing. This is impossible. This is impossible. This is impossible. It was as if the current Hao Bai only knew how to say this one sentence. Of course, no matter what Hao Bai said, Yi Xian did not care at all. Hugh, fortunately, my luck is not that bad. Finally, a sure kill effect appeared. If it didn't, I'm afraid that I would have died here today. Yi Xian also did not care about Hao Bai's soul. Even though this guy had temporarily left his soul behind using divine power, it was completely useless. How did you do it? Tell me how you did it. Suddenly, Hao Bai's excited voice sounded. Clearly, he was extremely unwilling to accept his inexplicable death. Oh, why should I tell you? Give me a reason. Yixian looked at Hao Bai. His eyes were filled with ridicule. This guy was a bit interesting. First, it was the shadowless divine light attack. Now, it was a soul that was temporarily left behind after death. It could be said that this guy had quite a lot of abilities. You tell me, and I'll tell you one thing. Hao Bai did not want to die without knowing why. In any case, he was already dead. Then what secrets? To him, there was no need to keep them. So he prepared to use his biggest secret against Yixian. As for that secret of his, in fact, it was not only the people of the 10,000 Beasts divine sect who were concerned about it. Even outside, there were many people who wanted to know about it. However, due to some special reasons, no one dared to use force on him. Yixian smiled. A secret? You a dead person? What qualifications do you have to tell me a secret? No, I have the qualifications. Do you want to know the secret of the shadowless divine light? Do you want to know the secret of my undying soul? I'll tell you. I know a shocking secret realm. A secret that only you know. Tell me how you killed me, and I'll tell you this secret. Yixian frowned slightly. What the hell? What was this Hao Bai trying to say? However, just as Yixian was about to refuse, he heard a system notification. Ding, the host has discovered a hidden mission. The mission is temporarily unknown. The host can choose whether or not to accept. No. Chapter 2132. Could it be that the secret Hao Bai spoke of was some sort of hidden mission? This was a situation that Yixian had never encountered before. It could even be said that it made Yixian somewhat confused. This was already out of Yixian's expectations. However, Yixian still had leeway to choose. Alright, you tell me first. If your secret is important enough, I can tell you why my sword was able to kill you. Don't worry, you're only a dead person. I have no need to hide anything from you. Since he made his decision, Yixian did not hesitate and directly said to Hao Bai Shui. After Hao Bai heard Yixian's affirmative answer, he directly said, I choose to believe you. Now I will tell you the secret I know. My name is Hao Bai. On the surface, my identity is the law-enforcing elder of the divine sect. However, my true identity is actually the walking emissary of Mo Shanggu. Do you want to ask what a walking emissary is? I can tell you that a walking emissary is a secret agent of Mo Shanggu placed in every sect. Haha, of course, being a secret agent is only secondary. What I want to tell you has nothing to do with being a secret agent. What I want to tell you is that Mo Shanggu is only a puppet. Do you know that the entire Mo Shanggu is a huge conspiracy? A shocking secret about the ancient demon Venerable. Hao Bai seemed to be muttering to himself. However, Yixian had already frowned. It seemed that this time he had really encountered something extraordinary. Yixian did not say anything and continued to listen. Of course, at this moment, he was no longer as casual as he was in the beginning. His attention was completely focused. Brat, the ancient demon Venerable is only a title. However, he does not represent a person. He represents a power that has already been destroyed. Perhaps you should know that there were countless experts in the ancient era. However, a war destroyed everything. And the one who started this war was the ancient demon Venerable. Perhaps you can call them Annihilation. Annihilation is an organization that has spread throughout the divine world. You can't imagine how strong Annihilation is. In fact, I don't know much. However, what I want to tell you is that Annihilation has already been revived. Countless ancient demon gods that have been buried for millions of years are currently undergoing a terrifying resurrection ceremony. Once the ceremony is completed, the entire divine world will disappear forever. Don't doubt my words. Don't think that it's strange that a mere divine realm expert like me would know this because Annihilation is still very weak. Therefore, even a mere divine realm expert like me. Pavilion Master Mo. I don't know the name of the resurrected ancient demon god. However, I can tell you that in order to resurrect him, a total of 999,900 totem beasts must be sacrificed. You should understand how terrifying he is. Alright, now that I've told you my secret, shouldn't you tell me what I want to know? Hao Bai said a lot of things in one breath. The amount of information was so huge that Yixian was dumbstruck. It seemed that Yixian had unknowingly come into contact with a shocking secret. A shocking secret of the divine world was discovered by a mere Yixian. Yixian was only a mere true god at this moment. Shock, fear. These emotions that shouldn't appear on Yixian's face appeared. Alright, I can tell you. My attack has the effect of one hit, one kill. You can treat it as my divine ability. Yixian didn't have the mood to care about Hao Bai. Therefore, he wanted to dismiss Hao Bai with a sentence. So that's how it is. Your divine ability is very strong. Alright, since you told me what I wanted to know, I'll give you one last sentence. Go to the northern ancient city, the Divine Dusk. There you have more things that you want to know. At the same time Hao Bai said those words, his body was already slowly fading. When he finished speaking, he had already completely disappeared. This conversation was actually very laughable. However, Hao Bai was already dead. It was useless for him to hide this secret. He might as well die and know how he was killed. Moreover, he told Yixian this secret because he had other intentions. That was to send Yixian to his death. This way, he might be able to get his revenge. Northern Ancient City, the Divine Dusk? Yixian silently remembered this phrase. He knew that from the moment he came into contact with this secret, he had no way of withdrawing. Ding attention host. The host has discovered a mandatory unique mission. Exterminate. Ding, the host has automatically accepted the mission. If the mission is successful, there will be no reward. If the mission is failed, the host will be exterminated. The system notified. However, this notification was really a trap. However, this mission made Yixian dumbstruck. A mandatory unique mission. What kind of mission was this? System, can you be more specific? I'm in a fog right now. I don't know anything. Yes, Yixian was at a loss. Ding attention host. This mission is the ultimate mission that the host must complete. Before exterminate destroys the realm of the gods, the host must stop them. Otherwise, the system will exterminate the host before the host dies at the hands of exterminate. What was this? What was this? Yixian was at a loss. Yes, Yixian was completely at a loss. At this moment, Yixian felt as if he had fallen into a shocking secret and could not extricate himself. Ding attention host. This mission can only be completed by the host alone. The system recommends that the host increase his strength as soon as possible and establish his own power. A portion of exterminate has already appeared. Once their leader appears, it will be the beginning of the end of the realm of the gods. Ding attention host. The leader of exterminate cannot be killed by normal means. The leader of exterminate is immune to all attacks. This is because the leader of exterminate is the source of divine power. Silence. A long silence. Yixian continued to ponder in his heart, but no matter how he thought about it, there was only one final result. He couldn't avoid it. Forget it. Since I've already encountered it, I can't blame myself for being unlucky. Or rather, I should say that I'm lucky. After all, if I knew about this earlier, I could have prepared in advance. It's better than inexplicably dying in the future. I didn't expect the realm of the gods to be hiding such a secret. Fortunately, this is the realm of the gods. If exterminate wants to revive, it will take hundreds of thousands of years. I have plenty of time. Fortunately, I found out about this in advance. Was Yixian cheering himself on? But it made sense. This was something that could not be avoided. It was better to know in advance and be prepared than to find out when the situation had reached a point of no return. Ding attention host. The host has discovered the ultimate secret of the realm of the gods. Due to the high difficulty of this mission, the system will automatically update and strengthen itself. Chapter 2133. Ding. System notification. Please take note that this upgrade will be carried out in the background and will not affect any of your functions. Ding. System notification. Please take note that this upgrade includes the humanization of the system and the development of subsystems. Ding. System notification. Please take note that the humanization of the system has been strengthened. In order to facilitate the accumulation of power in advance, the system will forcibly activate a subsystem. Please make your choice. Ding. Choice 1 Puppet Subsystem. After activating this subsystem, the system will automatically create a subbody for any enemy that the host kills. The subbody will possess all of the target's power but will not have a soul. This will make it easier for the host to use in the future. Ding. Choice 2 Unlimited Subsystem. After activating this subsystem, The system will continuously guide the host through missions to increase the host's power and allow the host to grow rapidly. Ding! Choice 3 Main System Upgrade. After upgrading, the main system will unlock a special reward mode for the host, as well as some other abilities. The sudden series of system notifications made Yixian realize that he had probably encountered something really big this time. Otherwise, the system wouldn't be so nervous. Puppet Subsystem, Unlimited Subsystem, and Main System Upgrade. 3 choices. However, Yixian didn't even consider it and chose the third option. Why? Because Yixian knew that the first 2 options had their limitations. Although they were powerful, they weren't really practical for Yixian. The Puppet Subsystem could be Yixian's subordinates, but it couldn't strengthen Yixian's power. The Unlimited Subsystem could only strengthen Yixian's power, but it couldn't strengthen his subordinates. Therefore, the Main System Upgrade was the best choice. Of course, this upgrade was different from the previous ones. This upgrade was mainly to upgrade the functions of the system. In other words, the future system would be more powerful and useful. Ding! Choice successful. System notification. This upgrade will take 3 days. Yixian nodded and then sat down cross-legged. He was waiting for the system to complete its upgrade. Sharpening the axe wouldn't delay the work of cutting wood. The system was Yixian's greatest protection. Therefore, 3 days was something Yixian could wait for. Ding! System upgrade successful. Main system upgrade successful. Was the upgrade finally complete? However, when Yixian examined it, he could not see anything special. Perhaps he would only truly understand what kind of changes had occurred when he used it in the future. Yixian stood up and walked out. That's right. That annihilation organization had made Yixian feel pressured. However, this matter was too far away from the current Yixian, so there was no need for Yixian to care so much. The best choice for Yixian was to increase his strength as soon as possible. The realm of the gods, this mysterious world, this unknown world, just how many unknowns were waiting for Yixian? Hao Bai did not leave behind many things. Even though he was a heavenly god realm expert, he was really poor in his Qiankuan ring. No one knew what this guy was doing. Even after devouring, Yixian did not receive a single level notification. As for Hao Bai's corpse, Yixian didn't devour it. Instead, he nurtured it in the devouring space with Li Lei and the others. Perhaps this guy would be of some use after he was revived. Yixian began his journey. This moment his goal was clear. In the words of the system, his ultimate mission was to fight against that mysterious annihilation organization. Of course, before that, Yixian's mission was to find Luo Luo and pass the endless trials. Luo Luo was in the west, while the ancient city of Divine Dusk was in the north. They were 2 completely different directions. Therefore, Yixian followed his original plan and went to the west to investigate Luo Luo's whereabouts. Of course, he would also take care of that Mo Shangge. 10 days later. Young master, come and take a look. These are all high-quality slaves, beauties, guards, or even divine beasts with special abilities. We have everything you need. Don't worry, I guarantee you'll be satisfied. At this moment, a middle-aged man stood in front of Yixian. This middle-aged man had a cunning smile on his face, but his strength was only at the lower true god realm. The city that Yixian was in was a free market set up by the Myriad Beast sect. Here, as long as you had divine crystals, you could get whatever you wanted. Whether it was slaves or information, as long as you could afford it, you could get it. This was also the reason why Yixian came here. Yixian looked at the man in front of him, but didn't pay him any attention. Yixian didn't need slaves. What he needed now was to find that so-called 100 mathematician. The 100 mathematician specialized in gathering information in this city. Furthermore, he wasn't a single person, but an organization that could accept scouting missions. Yixian wanted to use them to see if he could find Luo Luo's whereabouts. He turned and left immediately, which made the businessman very unhappy. Of course, he couldn't find trouble with Yixian. Where is this 100 mathematicians? Although Yixian knew about this organization, the 100 mathematician was different from other organizations. It was impossible to find them unless someone familiar introduced him. Forget it, I'll go to Lingxian Court first and see if they know. Yixian made up his mind and walked directly to Lingxian Court. Compared to the mysterious 100 mathematician, Lingxian Court's branch was much easier to find. Soon Yixian arrived at Lingxian Court. Sir, what would you like to order? A waiter came to Yixian's side and asked. Yixian looked at the waiter, then took out his guardian elder token and said, "Go and call your elder." Yes, I'll go right away." The waiter hurriedly agreed and walked away quickly. Soon an elder of Lingxian court walked out. It was the managing elder of this branch. "Greetings, guardian elder." When the elder saw the token in Yixian's hand, he didn't hesitate and immediately knelt on the ground. "Get up. I'm only looking for you because I have something to ask you. Don't be nervous." "Yes, guardian elder. If you have anything to ask of me, please let me know." "Yes, do you know where the 100 mathematician is? I need to ask them something." "This? Guardian elder, do you still need to ask about the 100 mathematician?" The elder was very surprised that Yixian would ask about the 100 mathematician. After all, in his opinion, the guardian elder could mobilize a huge amount of resources. Why would he need to ask others for help? Chapter 2134. Alright, you don't need to know. You don't need to know. Do you know by Swansea? Just answer me. Yes. Please calm down, guardian elder. I will bring you there now. Seeing that Yixian was a little angry, the Lingxian court elder did not dare to say anything else. Instead, he directly walked forward, obviously intending to bring Yixian there. After a while, when Yixian arrived at the place, he was a little surprised. He did not expect that Bai Swansea was actually the slave merchant that Yixian had met when he first entered the city. Of course, this slave merchant was just a contact. Seeing that the Lingxian court elder had actually brought someone over and was very respectful, the slave merchant naturally did not dare to be negligent. Without saying anything else, he brought Yixian to a private house. "Senior, please come in. Our city's abacus is inside." "Abacus?" Yixian asked doubtfully. "Oh, senior, you may not know this, but we, by Swansea, have 3 main occupations. The first is a guide like me, usually called a fan. The second is a person in charge of intelligence and missions, called an abacus. The third is usually a person in charge of contacting various forces, as well as some special missions and intelligence. They are called the 100 families." What kind of names were these? Yixian was speechless. Of course, he did not need to fuss over this. Soon they saw the so-called abacus. This person was holding a strange round disc Dharma treasure in his hand. No one knew what it was for. However, when Abacus saw the Lingxian court elder, he immediately walked over with a happy smile. "Yo, what kind of wind blew the elder of Lingxian court to my place? A rare guest, a rare guest. Lu Abacus, don't be rude. This is the guardian elder of Lingxian court. Quickly salute him." What? Lu Abacus was shocked. The guardian elder's reputation was so great that it made him panic. However, looking at Yixian, who was merely a mid-level true god, Lu Abacus revealed a puzzled look. It seems that this person's background is not simple. He is definitely not someone I can offend, Lu Suanpan said in his heart. After all, the guardian elder of Lingxian Pavilion could be considered a high-level figure in Lingxian Pavilion. The fact that a mid-divine being was able to take the position of guardian elder was already enough to show how extraordinary Yixian was. Junior greets senior. May I know why senior is looking for junior? Although Lu Abacus was not very strong, he was still a middle-level divine realm cultivator. However, he addressed himself as a junior in front of Yixian. Of course, Yixian did not care about this. "I need to gather information about a divine beast." After he finished speaking, Yixian handed over the detailed information about Luo that he had already prepared to Lu Abacus. Then he continued, "I don't care what methods you use, but you must help me find her whereabouts? How is it? Is there a problem?" No problem. Haha, I by Swansea and Lingxian Pavilion often interact with each other. Just leave this kind of small matter to us." "Okay, then I'll leave it to you." Yixian bowed slightly to Lu Abacus. Lu Abacus hurriedly bowed back. "Senior, please rest assured. If there is any news, we will inform you immediately." Yixian nodded and then asked, "Then how much do you charge?" "Senior, are you making fun of me? How would I dare to ask senior for a fee? Don't worry, I will do my best to complete the task. Please rest assured and wait for the news." "Alright, it's good that you don't charge me. Yixian is actually very poor now." After settling the matter, Yixian naturally did not stay any longer. Instead, he walked out directly. However, when he arrived at the slave market outside, he was attracted by a person who was locked in a cage. It was a young girl from the human clan. Moreover, she had a lower-level divine realm cultivation. However, why was she a slave? This was something that Yi Xian did not understand. Hence Yi Xian stopped in his tracks. Seeing Yi Xian's gaze, the slave merchant immediately said to Yi Xian, "Senior, you may not know this, but this girl is from the Baizhui tribe. The ancestor of the Baizhui tribe, committed a serious crime 1,000,000 years ago, and was personally executed by the overlord. At the same time, all members of the Baizhui tribe were reduced to slaves." Overlord? Slaves? Baizhui tribe? Of course, Yi Xian had no right to change these matters. "Senior, if you like this girl, then this little one will give her to you. However, senior, you must remember that the Baizhui tribe is a sinner personally sentenced by the overlord. Hence, if you do not like them, even if you kill them, you will not be able to restore their freedom. Otherwise, I am afraid that it will cause unnecessary trouble." Although the slave merchant did not say it explicitly, his meaning could not be more obvious. Yi Xian was no longer a brat who had just entered the realm of the gods. Although he did not know much, at least he knew about the overlord. In this world, there was only one main god because this was his territory. Very quickly, the slave merchant brought the young girl from the Calamity clan to Yi Xian's side. "Senior, this is this girl's life token. If you do not need her, just crush it and she will die immediately." Yi Xian nodded, not wanting to say anything else. In truth, Yi Xian himself did not know why he bought this girl from the Baizhui tribe. However, when he first saw her, Yi Xian felt like there was a voice in his heart telling him that he had to save this girl. Perhaps this was the so-called fate. In truth, with Yi Xian's current situation, it was not appropriate for him to bring along a burden. However, since things had already come to this, Yi Xian could not say anything. "Let's go," Yi Xian said casually to the girl. Then he walked ahead, minding his own business. After all, Yi Xian had only accepted this girl on a whim. However, when he actually accepted her, he did not know what to do. Even after they left the city, Yi Xian did not pay any attention to the foolish girl. Instead, it was the girl who took the initiative to speak to Yi Xian. "Sir, please wait." Her voice was neither servile nor overbearing. This was not the voice of a slave. Yi Xian instinctively stopped in his tracks and looked at the girl in confusion. He did not know what she was going to do next. "Sir, may I ask why you bought this girl?" Why would she ask him this? Yi Xian was stunned. Although he did not know why he did this, at least he was the master and this girl was the slave. How could this girl be more unreasonable than her master? "Why do you think I bought you?" For some reason, Yi Xian suddenly had the urge to seduce this girl. Chapter 21:35. You don't have to be like this, young master. Us from the Disaster clan are born as slaves, and we will be forever. So no matter what you want to do to me, I can't resist at all. However, when you first saw me you were confused, but now your eyes are extremely clear. I'm not talented, but I know that you didn't buy me for that filthy matter. Amazing. Yi Xian was depressed. This girl had seen through him. Girl, I'm your master now. Aren't you afraid that I'll punish you for speaking to me like that? Of course you wouldn't do that, because your heart is different from others. What do you mean? Why don't I understand what you're saying? Yi Xian really did not understand what this girl meant. What did she mean by his heart was different from others? This was truly confusing. Young master, are you not the true reason for the Disaster clan's crimes? What's the matter? Can't you just say it directly? Why are you speaking in riddles? I'm not in the mood to play riddles with you. Yi Xian was rendered speechless by this girl. What was going on? He had bought a slave and now he had bought back a problem? There's no need to be angry, young master. Perhaps you've heard that our Disaster clan's crimes are the wishes of the overgod, and that it's because our ancestor committed a serious crime. However, what I want to tell you is that our Disaster clan's original name is not the Disaster clan. If our ancestor really did commit a crime, then there's only one. What do you mean by that? I told you not to play riddles with me. Yi Xian was speechless. He was even a little angry. Our ancestor only committed one crime, and that is that he shouldn't have become an overgod. That one sentence shocked Yi Xian. What did that mean? Shouldn't have become an overgod? Could it be that the ancestor of the disaster clan was also an overgod? Wait a moment, girl. You're not trying to play with me, are you? Sai, do you think I want a burden like you? Here, this is your life talisman. You can do whatever you want. Now you don't have to make up a story to deceive me. What was happening now? No, to be precise, what this young girl said had already caused Yixian to be completely confused. Therefore, he didn't want to waste any time on this young girl, and directly threw her life talisman over. He couldn't be bothered to care so much. This girl could do whatever she wanted as long as she didn't disturb him. However, to Yixian's surprise, the young girl casually waved her hand and threw the life talisman back to Yixian. She then continued, "Young master, have you heard of Feiyu? What I want to tell you is that the ancestor of my disaster tribe is Feiyu. Also, what I want to tell you is that my disaster tribe was originally called the Bow tribe. Our innate ability allows us to see everything that happened to the person in front of us within a year." F***ck. Yixian was so shocked that he almost jumped up. What the hell? What kind of divine ability was this? To be able to see what had happened to others within a year, this was too amazing. Didn't that mean that this girl knew everything that had happened to Yixian before? What the hell, how could there be such a divine ability? Did it have to be so terrifying? How could he still have fun with this? Hehe, sir, there's no need to be like this. It was this little girl who misspoke. What this little girl meant was that I'm able to see things related to our clan. Hence, this little girl saw your trial and also the fact that the gatekeeper mentioned our ancestor. I say, little girl, you don't need to pause for breath when you speak. You scared me. I thought that your divine ability was really that amazing. However, your divine ability is really amazing. I'm curious, why does such a heaven-defying divine ability exist? There are so many races in the realm of the gods. What's so strange about having some innate divine abilities? My tribe isn't human to begin with. Although we look the same as humans, to the point that there isn't even the slightest difference, my tribe isn't human. Naturally, our divine ability is different. Girl, what are you trying to say by beating around the bush? Yixian was confused by this girl. He didn't know what she was trying to say. My request is very simple. I hope that young master can bring back my tribe's ancestor, Feiyu's quintessence fragment after the trial. Quintessence fragment? Yes. Could it be that young master is participating in the ancient god trial, but you don't know who the ancient god is? Yixian was at a loss for words. What? Could it be that this girl knows more about my matters than I do? Who is that ancient god? What does it have to do with me? I'll just take whatever benefits I can. However, why should I bring back your ancestor's quintessence fragment? Yes, why should he? Why should Yixian help this girl? This girl kept saying one thing after another. She just wanted his help. Besides, he was the master, and this girl was the slave. If young master can agree, then this girl is willing to follow young master wholeheartedly. Haha, what a joke. You're my slave. Your life is in my hands. Your reason isn't enough to move me. Yixian laughed heartily at this girl's words. In Yixian's heart, this girl's purpose was obvious. She just wanted him to save their ancestor. However, why should Yixian help her? There was no reason at all. Young master will help this girl. Because by helping this girl, young master can get benefits that you can't get. You're really confident. Unfortunately, I'm not interested. Yixian turned around and ignored this girl. Alright, from now on your name is Girl. No matter what you were called before, from today onwards your name is Girl. Yes, young master. Fian will remember it. She remembered it and purposely told him the name. What was the meaning of this? Yixian couldn't be bothered to turn around. If he continued to dawdle with this girl, sooner or later, he would be led around by this girl. However, Yixian didn't know that after he turned around, a smile appeared in Fian's eyes. With a wave of her hand, a weak light entered Yixian's body. Master, my Bow clan is a clan formed from spiritual bodies of heaven and earth. The life talisman is actually useless to my clan. Master, do you know that unless we're willing, no one can catch us? Countless years have passed. You're the first person to hear the name Feiyu. The name Feiyu has long been forgotten in this god realm and has been sealed. Even if you're unwilling, my Bow clan can only rely on you. Chapter 2136. The Bow clan was a mysterious clan, and Fian had purposely come to Yixian's side. In that case, was her goal really for the sake of their ancestor Feiyu? Or did she have other motives? Of course, Yixian could not possibly know all of this. She had inadvertently saved someone, but it was a premeditated act. If Yixian were to find out, who knew what he would think? Of course, Yixian did not know, so Yixian was still walking forward. This is the place. I heard that this is the 1,000-beast mountain that the 10,000 beasts divine sect has circled out. Then I'm sorry, but I'm going to kill monsters and level up here today. Yes, Yixian's goal this time was to level up in the 1,000-beast mountain. If only I could meet a devourer beast. Sigh, how pitiful. I don't have a single devourer point on me now. I have treasures, but I can't fuse with them. It really makes one's heart itch. Yixian pulled out the Godslayer and was ready for battle. However, Fian spoke again at this time. Master, I'll give you a suggestion. Don't kill divine beasts here, or you'll have unexpected trouble. Yixian pursed his lips. This girl, if he had known, he would not have bought her. Now she was actually controlling him. With a wave of his hand, the 100-beast sword servants appeared. Then, without any suspense, he used his ultimate move. In an instant, 100 god-tier mounts appeared. 3 platinum-grade god-tier mounts and 9 gold-grade god-tier mounts? My luck is pretty good this time. Yixian did not care about Fian's words and immediately started working. Go kill to your heart's content. Following Yixian's order, the 100 god-tier mounts, along with the 100-beast sword servants, rushed out at the same time. Yixian himself was not going to stay idle and immediately attacked. The battle was about to start. Who dares to be so presumptuous in my 10,000 beasts divine sect? Are you looking for death? However, not long after Yixian started working, he heard a loud roar. Then with a flash of light, a group of people appeared directly in front of Yixian. A teleportation array hidden by restrictions? And there's a F*King warning system? Yixian was stunned. What was going on? Since when did the 10,000 beasts divine sect have such a trump card? F*CK. Yixian had come here to level up. He had no intention of causing any trouble. But now, it seemed that he had gotten himself into trouble. Brat, who are you? How dare you behave so atrociously in my 10,000 beasts divine sect? Are you tired of living? At first, Yixian felt that he was in the wrong. Now this guy was acting all high and mighty. Did he think that Yixian was a pushover? 13 true gods and 2 heavenly gods? They were strong, but Yixian should not be afraid of them. Yes, I did. What are you going to do about it? Yixian looked at those people and said directly. That person was stunned. He almost couldn't react to Yixian's words. He had seen arrogant people before, but he had never seen such an arrogant person. He dared to behave atrociously in other people's territory and acted so righteously. More importantly, he was so weak. Brat, it seems that you're courting death. Then don't blame me for being merciless. Go kill him. Yixian did not have a good impression of the 10,000 beasts divine sect. Speaking of which, ever since Yixian came to the divine realm, he had been entangled with the 10,000 beasts divine sect. Moreover, it was not a happy matter. Wasn't that Hao Bai from before also a member of the 10,000 beasts divine sect? At least on the surface. Now, these people from the 10,000 beasts divine sect actually wanted to cause trouble for Yixian. How could Yixian agree? All of you go kill them. Since the opponent had already made a move, Yixian did not hesitate. He directly ordered all the divine rank mounts to charge at the people from the 10,000 beasts divine sect. And these divine beasts, could it be that he's controlling them? At this time, the people from the 10,000 beasts divine sect noticed that the divine beasts around them were all controlled by Yixian. In the 10,000 beasts mountain, it was not strange to have divine beasts. After all, this place was originally used by the 10,000 beasts divine sect to raise divine beasts. What is that? Could it be the so-called behemoth giant beast? And this one, what divine beast is that? Saber-toothed tiger? But why is it so strong? Heavens, and these 3 divine beasts, why are they so strange? I have never seen them before. And their strength, how can they be so strong? As soon as the battle started, the people from the 10,000 beasts divine sect, who thought that they had the absolute advantage, suddenly realized that they were in an absolute disadvantage. These guys were really unlucky. This time it was rare for Yixian to get 3 platinum-ranked war god mounts and 9 gold-ranked war god mounts, but these guys bumped into them. It could be said that Yixian did not even need to move, because these battle god mounts were enough to deal with the people from the 10,000 Beasts Divine Sect. Quick! Blow the 10,000 Beasts flute! A heavenly god realm disciple of the 10,000 Beasts Divine Sect shouted in panic. At this time, Yixian's battle god mounts had already surrounded them, and killing them was only a matter of time. In an instant, a disciple of the 10,000 Beasts Divine Sect suddenly took out a flute-like treasure and blew it. Rumble! As if the divine beasts of the 10,000 Beasts Mountain had received an order, they all rushed towards Yixian. Divine beasts covered the sky and covered the earth. However, there was a difference in strength between them. Kill them for me! The disciples of the 10,000 Beasts Divine Sect shouted in panic. In an instant, the battle between the divine beasts and the divine beast mounts began. However, although the 10,000 Beasts Divine Sect had reared countless divine beasts, their strength was not that great. Most of them were only equivalent to the true god realm, and they did not have any special abilities. How could they fight against Yixian's divine beast mounts? On the surface, the battle looked extremely fierce, but in reality, Yixian's divine beast mounts had the upper hand. 100 Beasts Feast start! Kill them all for me! Yixian activated the special ability given to him by the 100 Beast Sword Servant. Once the 100 Beasts Feast started, the divine beast mounts' abilities were strengthened. This battle had become a one-sided massacre. Retreat quick, get out of here, this guy is too strong, we are no match for him. After realizing that they had no chance, the people of the 10,000 Beasts Divine Sect were finally afraid. Soon these people used a special method to teleport away. After all, this was the territory of the 10,000 Beasts Divine Sect, and Yixian could not do anything about it. Yixian knew that after these people left, they would definitely inform more people to come over. Chapter 2137. It could be said that unless all the members of the Myriad Beasts Divine Sect were mobilized, they would not be able to do anything to Yixian. Of course, even so, Yixian did not want to really start a war here. To start a war in someone else's territory, and Yixian did not know anything about this place, this was undoubtedly a disadvantage for Yixian. Therefore, Yixian wanted to kill quickly and harvest as many divine beasts as he could. He did not want to fight too much. At this time, inside the Myriad Beasts Divine Sect, the alarm had already sounded. Pairs of disciples and powerful divine beasts quickly gathered. For thousands of years, the Myriad Beasts Divine Sect had never sounded such a high-level alarm. Many disciples did not understand what was going on. However, they could only follow behind the many elders and rush towards the Myriad Beasts Divine Mountain. They're here. Young master, why aren't you leaving? Suddenly, Fian's voice came. Yixian turned his head and saw Fian looking into the distance. At this time, Yixian remembered that this girl had disappeared the moment the enemy appeared. What was this? Of course, Yixian would not care about this. After all, this girl was only a deity. Even if she came, she would not be of much help. Yixian knew who Fian was talking about, but he did not want to leave like this. After all, it was not easy to summon 3 platinum-level war god mounts this time. The current war god mounts were at least silver level. Not to mention platinum level, even gold level mounts rarely appeared. If he left now, the next time he might not be able to summon them. If they wanted to come, then come. If the Myriad Beasts Divine Sect did not know what was good for them, Yixian did not mind fighting with them. Great Elder, that guy is right in front. Soon a group of people rushed over. The black mass of people, as expected, all of them had come. Yixian was stunned. Was there a need? He had only killed a few divine beasts. Wasn't the Myriad Beasts Divine Sect's reaction a bit too much? Surround him. In an instant, the disciples of the Myriad Beasts Divine Sect surrounded the Myriad Beasts Divine Mountain. In the sky and on the ground, countless disciples and divine beasts were planning to completely surround Yixian. Devourer Beast. Suddenly, Yixian sensed the presence of the Devourer Beast. F***CK. It must be killed. Although Yixian had already seen the surrounding disciples of the 10,000 Beasts Divine Sect, he actually discovered the Devouring Beast at this time. No matter what, Yixian couldn't leave. Deity slaying /. Yixian's figure moved as he pounced towards the Devouring Beast. In the sky and below the ground, groups of disciples from the 10,000 Beasts divine sect quickly surrounded Yixian. Thousands of people shouted at the same time, accompanied by the roars of countless divine beasts. This was the rhythm of trapping Yixian to death. Oh, it was actually a mid-class devouring beast. Yixian was secretly happy. After getting the devourer beast, he was ready to leave. Suddenly, he sensed the presence of the devourer beast. F***ck, is the devourer beast going to be released today? Girl, you go first. Yixian turned around and was about to ask Fian to leave first. After all, Fian was useless in the upcoming battle. In fact, he should have reminded Yixian earlier. But the battle was too intense and he forgot to do so. But when he turned around, he was stunned. Fian was nowhere to be seen. F***ck, so unloyal. She ran away just like that. Yixian was speechless. Of course, he was not petty enough to blame Fian. Where is the devourer beast? Where is it? Is it at the top of the mountain? Let's see how you escape. Yixian led the 3 platinum divine beast mounts and ran towards the top of the mountain without saying a word. Surround him. Hurry up and summon all the divine beasts. Today we must kill this thief. The disciples of the divine beast sect were delighted when they saw Yixian running towards the top of the mountain. Haha, this thief. Let's see where he is going to escape to this time. Set up the forbidden space seal and the cross seal. We must not let this guy escape. The forbidden space seal was to prevent Yixian from flying in the air. The cross seal was a special seal of the divine beast sect. Its purpose was to prevent Yixian from using the teleportation seal. At least 100 disciples of the divine beast sect immediately busied themselves and set up one seal after another. This time, let's see how this thief is going to escape. Go, 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 kill him. The great elder of the divine beast sect led the crowd and surrounded the top of the mountain. However, Yixian had also discovered another devourer beast. Although this devourer beast was much stronger than the previous one. However, with the 3 platinum-ranked war god mounts and Yixian personally making a move, there was no way for him to escape. Gotcha! 1/. Instant kill. Ding! Congratulations to host for obtaining 3 devourer points. It was a high-level devourer beast. Awesome! Yixian laughed out loud. This was too awesome. He had obtained 5 devourer points in one go. This was a timely reign. Of course, the people of the divine beast sect had also arrived in front of Yixian. Thief! Let's see how you are going to escape today. More than 300 elites of the heavenly god realm and above surrounded Yixian. Thief, surrender yourself and we can still spare your life. Otherwise, you'll suffer a fate worse than death. Really? Haha, do you think that you can catch me? Yixian laughed out loud. The people of the divine beast sect were puzzled by his laughter. No matter how they looked at the current situation, Yixian was at an absolute disadvantage. The divine beast sect had more people and powerful spiritual treasures and divine beasts. Yixian, who was surrounded in the middle, had no chance of escaping. Why was he still so arrogant? Boy, are you still not giving up? We have already set up a sky restriction seal. Furthermore, don't expect that you can use your spiritual treasure to teleport away. We have also set up a restriction seal to stop you. Today you will definitely die. The great elder of the divine beast sect looked at Yixian and said calmly. He looked like he was going to defeat Yixian, which made Yixian very unhappy. Oh, is that so? Then come and catch me. Haha, bunch of fools. Suddenly, Yixian took out a strange talisman and crushed it. After that, Yixian's figure disappeared. How is this possible? We have already set up a cross-restriction seal. How did he do it? Damn it. Great Elder, what should we do with the divine beasts that the thief left behind? Kill them all. The Great Elder was currently extremely angry because Yixian was actually able to teleport away in such a situation. This was something that he couldn't accept. Originally, it was an action that he had to take, but he didn't expect that Yixian would be able to dodge it so easily. Chapter 2138. However, what happened next made the first elder so angry that he almost vomited blood. Because just as they were about to kill Yixian's god-tier mounts, those god-tier mounts turned into white light and disappeared. Of course, this was because Yixian had cancelled the summons. However, the people of the Myriad Beasts sect did not know this. Their entire sect had mobilized, but they had not even touched Yixian's clothes. They had been played like monkeys by Yixian. How could they accept this? Unfortunately, this was the truth. Even if they did not want to accept it, they had to accept it. At this moment, Yixian had already appeared in the endless trials. Yes, Yixian had just left by crushing the Boundless Tower's designated transmission talisman. It was that simple. Back then, Yixian had obtained a total of 3 designated transmission talismans. Now Yixian was only using the second one. Hey kid, you're here so quickly. Why are you preparing to challenge me? As expected, the moment Yixian appeared, the voice of the gatekeeper could be heard as well. No, I'm just here to see you. I'll challenge you later. Hehe. Seeing that you're safe and sound, I'm relieved. Well then I'll take my leave first. With that, Yixian walked out. However, Yixian did not notice that this time the gatekeeper did not speak. What he did not know was that the gatekeeper was looking at his figure with a glimmer of light in his eyes. These gatekeepers had always been guarding their mission. No one had ever cared about them. In the eyes of their masters, they were probably just tools. In the eyes of the challengers, they were just dispensable existences. Who would care about them? No one. No one. Yixian was the first. Of course, to Yixian, he was just casually saying that. He did not really care about the gatekeeper. But the gatekeeper didn't know that. In his eyes, Yixian had really come over and even said some words of concern to him. Yixian had no idea what he had done. At this moment, he was sorting out his gains. System Devour. Let's see how many times I can level up this time. Yixian had not devoured the corpses of the mythical beasts because of the Devourer beast. But now he had to devour them. Peak Superior Deity. This was Yixian's goal. He would only challenge Yixian after reaching the peak of Superior Deity. Ding! The host has made a breakthrough. The host is now a Superior Deity of the 4th grade. Not bad for levels up. Yixian was very satisfied. After all, other than the 4 levels, the most important gain was the 5 Devour points. With 5 Devour points, Yixian could use the 1,000 souls that he had obtained earlier. The 1,000 spirits could only be used to strengthen one type of beast, either to increase the level of the beast mount, or to strengthen the 100 Beast Sword Servant. Of course, it could also strengthen the Withered Bone Sword Servant, but Yixian had never considered this. System. I want to use the 1,000 souls and the Devour points to strengthen the 100 Beast Sword Servant. Ding! Strengthening successful. Congratulations to the host. The 100 Beast Sword Servant has leveled up to the 1,000 Beast Sword Servant. Ding! The 100 Beasts movement has leveled up to the 1,000 Beasts movement. Yixian nodded. Why did Yixian choose to strengthen the 100 Beast Sword Servant instead of the Divine Beast mount? The reason was very simple. Although strengthening a Divine Beast mount would allow it to be restored to the Gold grade, the 1,000 Beasts movement would allow one to summon 1,000 leveled up Divine Beast mounts. Even if it was a Silver grade Beast mount, it would still be able to summon 1,000 at a time. Could it be that these 1,000 God tier mounts were so unlucky that they were all Silver tier? Therefore, no matter how one looked at it, strengthening the 1,000 Beasts movement was the most worthwhile. For example, if Yixian had already been strengthened by the 1,000 Beasts movement when he was at the 1,000 Beasts mountain, perhaps at that time, he would have summoned 30 Platinum grade Divine Beast mounts and 90 Gold grade Divine Beast mounts. The gap between them could be imagined. The higher the quantity, the higher the chance of success. Therefore, Yixian would not be wrong to use the only 1,000 souls on the 1,000 Beast Sword Servant. Ding! The 100 Beast Sword Servant has leveled up to the 1,000 Beast Sword Servant. The host skill, 100 Beasts Feast, has automatically leveled up to 1,000 Beasts Feast. The sudden notification from the system made Yixian happy. He had almost forgotten that there was such a benefit. The 1,000 Beast Sword Servant had leveled up. So did Yixian's skill. Awesome! This time it was awesome. Of course, Yixian did not dare to use the remaining 2 Devour points. Encountering 2 Devour beasts at once was already very good luck. Who knew when he would encounter another Devour beast next time? Yixian did not dare to act recklessly. If he encountered something good the next time, but did not use the Devour points to strengthen himself, Yixian would be depressed. Continue to level up. The 1,000 Beasts Divine Sect was a good place. Then, he should go find them and see if he could find another devour beast. Right, there was also their totem beasts. Don't let a single one go. Yixian's lips curled up slightly, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Since the Thousand Beasts Divine Sect wanted to find trouble with Yixian did not need to be polite with them. Kill to your heart's content. Continue to level up. Of course, this time Yixian still had to be careful. After all, he only had one designated transmission talisman. If he was forced into the endless trials, then Yixian would have to undergo the trials. This was definitely not something Yixian wanted to see. If you want to kill, then kill the useful ones. Let's start with the Thousand Beasts Divine Sect's totem beasts. Yixian smiled faintly. However, the Thousand Beasts Divine Sect was in for a bad time. Yixian turned around and was shocked. No, didn't you leave? Why did you come out again? It turned out that Fei Yan was silently standing behind Yixian. What was this? Yixian did not even sense his appearance, but Fei Yan was standing there. One had to know that Yixian had used the designated transmission talisman, and he was still in the Valley of Despair. How did Fei Yan do it? Young master, there is no need to be nervous. This little girl only used this little girl's special ability to bind herself to young master. No matter where young master is, this little girl can instantly reach young master's side. Holy shit! Yixian was stunned. This divine ability was really awesome. What was going on with this flying smoke? The two divine abilities that it displayed were actually so powerful. First, it was something that allowed her to see things related to her people within a year. Now, it was an infinite positioning that allowed her to teleport to his side at any time. How many more abilities did she have? Chapter 2139. Of course, Yixian wasn't worried that this girl would harm him because her divinity fragment was in Yixian's hands. If Yixian died, this girl wouldn't be able to live either. Moreover, if Yixian wanted to, he could kill this girl with a single thought. He ignored Fian and ran straight out of the Valley of Despair. Fian silently glanced at the endless tower of trials before following behind Yixian. You're the one. At this moment, Yixian had already appeared in the intersection of the Divine Beast Sect. Although he didn't know where the other totem beasts were, he didn't have a disciple to ask for directions. This disciple of the Myriad Beasts Divine Sect was really unlucky. He was just cultivating, but he didn't expect that someone would directly break into his house. He didn't even have time to react before he was directly controlled. Spiritual sense control was so useful. Master. The disciple looked at Yixian. He wasn't in a daze. Instead, he was very clear. However, he was no longer the same person as before. Alright, tell me where the other totem beasts are. Except for the Jiuluo 7 Extremes Mountain. Yes, Master. The totem beasts of the Divine Beast Sect are divided into 4 areas. Apart from the Jiuluo 7 Extremes Mountain, there's also the Deep Ocean Peak, the Judy Valley, and the Lu Huan Lake. Alright, then bring me there. Just bring me to the nearest place. Yixian instructed. The disciple didn't hesitate and walked straight ahead. As Yixian walked, he was a bit depressed. This was because he suddenly realized that although spiritual sense control was useful, it wasn't that great. This was because if he didn't use up his devouring points to control it permanently, then the person he controlled might not be able to control it for a certain amount of time based on the strength of his spiritual sense. As for this mere lower deity realm fellow, Yixian could only control him for a day. It would be great if he could unconditionally and permanently control him. This wasn't because Yixian wasn't satisfied, but because spiritual sense control was really useful. Soon, Yixian arrived at a valley under the guidance of the disciple. This valley had no entrance at all. All 4 sides were steep cliffs. This was simply a natural cage. In the valley there were countless divine beasts. Among them there were 21 totem beasts. This was the Jubilant Flute Valley. Similarly, the totem beasts here were all suppressed. Of course, this time Yixian didn't need to go out and buy anything to break the restriction. Yixian immediately jumped down. Although the valley was high, Yixian felt no pressure at all. Yes, someone has entered the Judy Valley. Quick, let's go check it out. Just as Yixian landed in Judy Valley, the All-Beasts Divine Sect received the warning. In an instant, more than a dozen disciples charged toward the Jubilant Flute Valley. It turned out that the All-Beasts Mountain had a transmission restriction because it was actually a place where the disciples of the All-Beasts Divine Sect cultivated. A place where the totem beasts were suppressed wouldn't have a transmission array. After all, there wouldn't be a transmission array at the location of the totem beasts. Who knew if it was for the convenience of thieves? Therefore, these disciples could only fly over quickly. The time they took to fly over was enough for Yixian to kill all the totem beasts here. These totem beasts were all suppressed by the restriction. How could they be a match for Yixian? It was a matter of time before they were killed. When the disciples of the All Beasts Divine Sect arrived, all they saw was a mess. Even the corpses of the totem beasts were gone. As for Yixian, he had already moved to another place. By the time the disciples reported, Yixian had already arrived at his second target, the Ocean Tolerance Peak. Damn it, it must be him. It must be that thief. Quick, send people to guard Liuhuan Lake and send people to the Ocean Tolerance Peak. We must hurry. It was unlucky for the All Beasts Divine Sect to provoke Yixian. In fact, the 4 places where the totem beasts were suppressed were actually very secretive. The disciples of the All Beasts Divine Sect might not know all of them. Of course, the disciples in charge of guarding these totem beasts were excluded, and the disciple that Yixian found happened to be the disciple in charge of guarding. After offending Yixian, they still hoped to keep the totem beasts. Wasn't it too much? 21 totem fragments, plus Yixian's remaining, there were 27 pieces. Of course, they wouldn't be in a hurry to use them. When Yixian killed the 26 totem beasts on the Ocean Tolerance Peak, he had 53 totem marks in his hands. Poor All Beasts Divine Sect, there were only a few dozen totem beasts in total. In the end, most of them were taken away by Yixian. Young master, are you going to continue killing totem beasts? Coming down from the Ocean Tolerance Peak, Fian asked Yixian. Haha, why should I go? Now, as long as the people of the All Beasts Divine Sect are not stupid, I'm afraid that they have already arranged a large number of troops there. I'm not that stupid if I go there now. Yixian replied with a smile. He was in a good mood now. Oh, then young master, where are you going again? Fian looked at Yixian and also showed a smile. Where to? Hee, since those guys thought that I would go find trouble with the totem beasts, then there must be no one guarding inside their sect. So, I'm going to their treasury. Yes, Yixian not only wanted to rob the All Beasts Divine Sect's totem beasts, he also wanted to loot their treasury. Poor All Beasts Divine Sect, they were really bloody unlucky. Wasn't it bad luck to encounter a killing god like Yixian? Yixian's figure moved and rushed straight to the All Beasts Divine Sect's main hall. From the mouth of the disciple who was controlled by Yixian's spiritual sense, he had already known all the information he wanted. Soon, he arrived at the mysterious main hall. This was the most mysterious place in the entire All Beasts Divine Sect. At the same time, it was also the core of the entire All Beasts Divine Sect. The All Beasts Treasure Pavilion. The All Beasts Treasure Pavilion was the place where the All Beasts Divine Sect stored magic weapons, cultivation methods, and other good things. Usually, there were dozens of disciples guarding it at all times, but at this time there were only 10 people guarding it. The people of the All Beasts Divine Sect never thought that Yixian would be so bold to rob here. This was the core area of the All Beasts Divine Sect. With so many disciples outside, who would have thought that an outsider could sneak in here? Unfortunately, others couldn't, but Yixian could. At this time, there were already more than 30 disciples of the All Beasts Divine Sect gathered around Yixian. These were all people that Yixian controlled with his spiritual sense along the way. Chapter 2140. Of course, there were more than 300 heavenly god disciples in the sect. However, who would have thought that Yixian would swagger his way into the core of the sect? Go, get rid of those people for me, Yixian said to the disciples he controlled with his spiritual consciousness. The strongest among them was only an upper-level true god. There was not even a single heavenly god disciple. On the other hand, there were 10 heavenly god disciples guarding the Myriad Beast Treasure Pavilion. There was even a peak heavenly god powerhouse among them. It was almost impossible to expect these 30 people to defeat 10 heavenly god powerhouses. However, it was possible. The reason was simple. These people were all from the same sect. Although there were more than 1,000 disciples in the sect, they had been together for at least 1,000 years. How could they not know each other? Therefore, when the 30 or so disciples controlled by Yixian walked toward the Myriad Beast Treasure Pavilion, the guards did not think much of it. Hey, why are you guys back? Didn't you go with the Great Elder to catch the thief? Senior brother, are you mocking us? You know that we are only true gods. It's useless even if we go. How can you say that? Haha, junior brother, don't blame us. That's not what I meant. I was just curious. That thief dared to provoke the myriad beast divine sect. He's courting death. Haha, yeah, he's courting death. Suddenly, the disciples who were talking nicely just a moment ago suddenly burst out with a powerful light. They did not hesitate to launch a sneak attack. Their method was extremely despicable. How could these protector disciples be on guard at all? In an instant, 6 of them died. The remaining 4 were severely injured. Only the peak heavenly god disciple was in better shape. However, he did not have the chance. This was because under Yixian's command, the disciples who were controlled by his spiritual consciousness pounced on him. Self-destruction. Self-destruction of divine spark. This was the most powerful attack of each of them. This was because all of their cultivation base was concentrated in an instant. One could only imagine the power that could be unleashed. The peak heavenly god disciple died unjustly. He did not even understand what was going on. However, he was killed by the self-detonation of more than a dozen people. In a flash, Yixian rushed into the myriad beasts treasure pavilion. Yixian didn't care too much, because he was very clear that this was definitely the core area of the myriad beasts divine sect. Once there was the slightest abnormality, there would definitely be a large number of myriad beasts divine sect disciples coming to his aid. Therefore, Yixian did not care about anything else after he entered. As long as he saw something, no matter what it was, he would absorb it into his devouring space. Not good. The 10,000 Beasts Treasure Pavilion. The great elder of the 10,000 Beasts Pavilion was extremely shocked. Only he knew how shocked he was. As he shouted, his figure disappeared. Although he did not hesitate to teleport back, it was only a matter of a few seconds. However, these few seconds were enough for Yixian to do many things. Die! Die! As soon as the great elder appeared, he launched an extremely powerful attack. It could be said that this attack was something that Yixian could not resist at all. This was because the great elder's realm was so strong that even the system could not detect him. However, Yixian was already prepared. At the same time that the great elder appeared, Yixian also crushed the directional teleportation talisman in his hand. The great elder of the myriad beasts divine sect only saw Yixian disappear with a smile on his face. At this moment his heart was dripping blood. Could even be said that he was extremely terrified. When the sect master left, he had handed over the sect to him. However, not only had he lost almost all of the totem beasts, but he had also caused the myriad beasts treasure pavilion to be plundered. How could he bear such a crime? Yixian returned to the endless tower of trial. However, what he did not know was that because of his plundering, the myriad beasts divine sect was done for. This was because after the great elder knew that he would definitely die, he actually plundered the remaining treasures of the 10,000 Beasts treasure pavilion after Yixian left. Then, he brought his close disciples and fled without a trace. The realm of the gods was so big that the great elder believed that he could definitely find a place to start anew. Furthermore, he still had so many treasures in his hands. When the sect master of the myriad beasts divine sect received this news, he was so angry that he vomited blood. His myriad beast divine sect, Yixian, was a pretty strong sect. However, it had been destroyed in a single day. Without the totem beasts and the treasures that the myriad beasts treasure pavilion had accumulated over tens of thousands of years, what was left of the myriad beasts divine sect? There was nothing left. All that was left was an empty shell. Even though the myriad beasts divine sect still existed, its strength had fallen to its lowest point. Of course, this had nothing to do with Yixian. Yixian stood in the endless tower of trial and laughed foolishly. Haha, haha, I've made a huge profit. This time, I've really made a huge profit. As he looked at the countless treasures in the devouring space, Yixian was overjoyed. Little guy, what made you so happy? This time, I'm afraid you'll have to challenge it. You don't have any more teleportation talismans. It was the voice of the gatekeeper. However, this time there was a hint of laughter in his voice. Could it be that he was laughing because he saw Yixian laughing? I know. This time I'll definitely challenge it. However, I need to prepare first, Yixian said to the gatekeeper. At this point, he still hadn't recovered from the huge haul. In fact, the Myriad Beast Treasure Pavilion had a total of 7 floors. Yi Xian had only plundered the first and second floors. Naturally, the higher the floor, the better the treasures. In terms of value, Yi Xian had only obtained 1% of the entire Myriad Beast Treasure Pavilion's value. However, one shouldn't forget that this was a sex stock. Even if it was only 1%, it was still a huge profit for Yi Xian. This time Yi Xian had obtained countless treasures. There was no need to go into the details. In terms of cultivation techniques, there were more than 30, including one of the Myriad Beast's Divine Sect's 3 greatest techniques, the Myriad Beast Summoning Technique. Regardless of how useful these cultivation techniques were to Yi Xian could fuse cultivation techniques. In other words, even if Yi Xian didn't need a cultivation technique, he could still use the system to exchange for something that was suitable for him. Then there were the interspatial rings. Needless to say, the disciples who had been controlled by Yi Xian's spiritual consciousness had long since lost their interspatial rings to Yi Xian. As for the sky celestial guards behind them, 7 of their interspatial rings had been snatched away by Yi Xian. Chapter 2141. Such a good thing would be hard to come by a second time. Only sects like the Myriad Beast sect, which was not very organized, could be so easily ambushed. If it were other sects, Yi Xian would have been killed before he could do anything. It was unimaginable for a person to ambush a sect's treasure vault. Moreover, this person was only a deity. System, come level up. Haha. It's time for a big harvest. Oh right, system, you're right. I can only level up to the peak superior deity. Don't you dare level me up to the heavenly god realm. What an awesome tone. Did you see that? Level up has to be calculated. Don't level up too much. Right now, Yi Xian was simply a tycoon. He probably wouldn't be able to find a second person to level up like this. Ding! Host has broken through. Current superior deity level 9. Along with the system's notification, Yi Xian successfully leveled up to superior deity level 9, which was the peak deity level. Moreover, as long as Yi Xian was willing, he could break through to the heavenly god realm at any time because he had enough resources in his hands. The breakthrough this time only used up 1/3 of the resources that Yi Xian had plundered. That was how willful he was. I can level up, but I won't. However, after that, Yi Xian had to start considering how to increase his strength with the cultivation of a peak god. His current realm was high enough, but his strength was still a little lacking. After all, the guardian god had already made it clear that this challenge wasn't that simple. If Yi Xian wanted to successfully pass, it was impossible for him to not use some strength. Then, let's start with the cultivation techniques. Come, system, integrate all these cultivation techniques. I don't believe that with so many cultivation techniques, I can't get a good one. The cultivation techniques of the Myriad Beast sect were not good enough for Yi Xian. Even the cultivation techniques of the Myriad Beast sect were just so in Yi Xian's eyes. It was better to let the system integrate them. Who knows, he might be able to get some benefits. What kind of new cultivation technique could emerge from the fusion of over 30 cultivation techniques? Yi Xian was looking forward to it. Ding! Host has chosen to fuse cultivation techniques. Fusing in progress. Ding! System notification. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the special skill, Summon the Heavens. What was that? Summon the world? What the hell was this? Yi Xian hurriedly checked the manual carefully. However, after reading it, he was both happy and worried. What kind of summoner is this? He was very strong. It could be said that he was so strong that it made people blind. Summon the Heavens. A special skill that can only be used by the host. It cannot be taught to anyone else. Each use will consume 10 Devour points. Special Effect 1. Any character summoned by the host will not be lower than the host's current level, and there is no upper limit. Special Effect 2. The host can summon any fantasy character, whether fictional or real. Special Effect 3. The host can summon an army of thousands, but the average strength of the army will be weakened. Restriction. Summon the world. Can only be used once a month. Also, the person summoned cannot be specified. Every time it will be a different person. Yes, it was that awesome. It was just that the cooldown time was chilling. It could only be used once a month. What the hell was that? Of course, Yi Xian was not really dissatisfied. One had to know that there was no upper limit to the number of characters that could be summoned. The most awesome part was that it could summon any character. In fact, even if Yixian was clearly hostile to someone and was about to attack, Yixian could summon that person with a casual summon. It was not impossible. In short, this summon the heavens was simply a super skill. Moreover, besides summoning people to fight, it could also summon an army of thousands. It was simply too awesome. Yes, there was another restriction, and that was the 10 Devour points. However, this was ignored by Yixian. If it did not consume Devour points, Yixian would find it strange. Consuming Devour points meant that it was a product of the system. A product of the system had to be of high quality. Yixian was satisfied. Now that he had the cultivation method, let's see if there was anything else that would be useful for this trial. Yixian carefully inspected the treasures that he had obtained, but the results made him a little depressed. It was not that these treasures were all useless. In fact, there were still a few good items, but the key was that these items all required Devour points without exception. Moreover, the cheapest item required 5 Devour points, or perhaps there was not enough other materials. In this case, Yixian could not use them even if he wanted to. Since that was the case, Yixian directly said to the Guardian, "Guardian, I am ready. Gatekeeper, I'm ready. I'm going to start the Sovereign's trial. Little guy, have you thought it through? Of course, since I have already come this far, I will not give up. Don't worry, little guy. I will ensure your safety. Leave behind your shard of divinity. Even if you are unfortunately killed, I can save you. Don't worry, the shard of divinity I will leave for you is not the kind of shard of divinity that is restricted. It is a shard of divinity that contains your divine will and soul aura. Consider it as leaving you a second life." Yixian was stunned. He was not thinking about why the Guardian wanted his shard of divinity, but Fei Yan's words. Previously, Fei Yan said that she wanted Yixian to help her get back Fei Yu's shard of divinity. It seemed that Fei Yan was telling the truth. Now, the Guardian was also asking Yixian for his shard of divinity. "Guardian, I have a presumptuous request. Can you give me Fei Yu's shard of divinity?" Yixian directly asked. He did not know whether the Guardian would agree, but since Fei Yan made such a request, Yixian would not be stingy. "Oh, you want Fei Yu's shard of divinity? Sure, this thing is of no use to me anyway. Take it." Who would have thought that it would be so simple? The Guardian did not even ask, directly throwing Fei Yu's shard of divinity to Yixian. Yixian did not stand on ceremony. He directly put the shard of divinity into his devouring space. Together with Li Lei, Hao Bai, and the others, he nurtured it beside the lasting soul flower. "Alright, I'll send you to the trial now. What I can tell you is that everything in this Paragon trial is random. This is a special space created by Master using his supreme magic power. The trial there will be an illusion that is suitable for you based on your own strength. Young man, do your best." The Guardian's voice disappeared. At the same time, Yixian's figure also disappeared from the Tower of Trials. When he reappeared, he was actually on a floating island. Yixian looked down, but there was only emptiness. When he looked up, there was also emptiness. Chapter 2142. Yixian stood there alone, waiting for the test to begin. The Guardian had said that this time, the supreme trial would adjust his opponent based on his overall strength. In other words, even he himself did not know who his opponent would be. Or rather, what would it be? However, Yixian did not have to wait for long. Soon, an illusory shadow appeared on the floating island. Yes, it was a shadow. And this was Yixian's opponent. "Are you ready? Shadows can speak?" Yixian was stunned. This shadow could actually speak. "We can begin at any time," Yixian said to the shadow. At the same time, he got into position. This time, Yixian did not take the initiative to attack. This was because he did not know what this shadow was capable of. Of course, one thing was for sure. This shadow's strength was not to be underestimated. "Thousand Beast Sword Servants, come out!" A voice called out, summoning the Thousand Beast Sword Servants. Could it be that Yixian had made his move? No. It was actually that shadow. He had actually used Yixian's mystique. What was going on? Yixian was stunned. He had never expected that this shadow would use his mystique. Soon, another shadow appeared beside the first shadow. At this time, Yixian noticed that this shadow silhouette was 90% similar to Yixian's own, and that Thousand Beasts Sword Servant silhouette was exactly the same as Yixian's Thousand Beasts Sword Servant. Of course, they were both shadows. Indeed, as expected by Yixian, when that shadow Thousand Beasts Sword Servant appeared, he immediately used his ultimate move, the Advance of the Thousand Beasts. Following that, 1,000 shadow mounts appeared. All of them were shadows. Yixian's opponent this time was himself. What was this? This damn trial was actually letting Yixian fight himself? How was he supposed to fight? In fact, if Yixian was the one fighting the enemy, then Yixian would not hesitate or fear. But for himself? Oftentimes, the person that one understands the most is oneself, and the person that one does not understand the most is oneself. Yixian frowned. He knew that the challenge this time would not be so simple. On the surface, this shadow didn't look too different from Yixian. However, Yixian's sharp senses told him that this shadow wasn't very nimble, but the skills it used were stronger than Yixian's. The god-tier shadow mounts were all in the heavenly god realm. In other words, this shadow Yixian's skill had been strengthened, using the strengthening method to make up for his inflexibility? As Yixian pondered this question, he had already made his move. He also summoned his Thousand Beast Sword Servants and his divine mount. However, Yixian's eyes were fixed on the shadow. A moment later, a smile appeared on Yixian's face. Perhaps Yixian had already understood his true purpose for participating in this supreme trial. This trial wasn't a trial for the sake of training. In fact, it was more like training and nurturing, condensing a shadow of the challenger and completely imitating all the abilities of the challenger. It could be said that Yixian had been continuously collecting data during his previous battle. In other words, perhaps from the moment Yixian had entered the Valley of Despair, a pair of mysterious eyes had been watching Yixian. They had been watching Yixian's every move and every action of Yixian's. The reason they had done this wasn't because they had any ill intentions. On the contrary, they had done this to better help Yixian. Rewards aside, this shadow opponent was an opportunity for Yixian to get to know him better. After understanding the crux of the matter, Yixian's heart was filled with gratitude. That's right, this trial was very strict. A single mistake could result in death. However, Yixian's quintessence shard had been taken away before he entered this place. In other words, this supreme trial was an absolutely safe environment from the very beginning. The master of this place simply wanted to nurture people to enter the supreme trial. Then let's fight. Let's fight with all our might. Let's use this battle to prove that the master of this place didn't see wrong. Let's use this battle to let Yixian discover his own weaknesses. The shadow and Yixian's god-grade mounts were already tangling in a fierce battle. At the same time, Yixian also charged at the shadow. Every time the shadow didn't use any special skills, and neither did Yixian. Instead, he sharpened himself with each strike. Yixian's current battle was like looking into a mirror. As long as Yixian observed carefully, he would be able to discover his own weaknesses. As long as the shadow's weakness was revealed, it was also Yixian's own weakness. The battle lasted for a very long time, so long that even Yixian had forgotten about the time. The Thousand Beast Sword Servants died again and again, but they were immediately summoned again once the cooldown was over. Yixian's battle with the shadow never stopped for a moment. Time passed. On this day, the battle was still as usual. There wasn't much difference, but suddenly the shadow disappeared. A voice sounded at the same time. "Young man, your aptitude is not bad. You are very good. This sovereign is very satisfied. Compared to the previous few brats, your mind is much better. I didn't expect you to have seen through the true goal of this trial from the very beginning. So, have you learned anything?" This voice sounded very old. No, perhaps it would be more appropriate to describe it as having experienced the vicissitudes of life. This voice was very faint, as if it didn't exist at all. "I have learned," Yixian calmly replied. Yes, he had learned. But what had he learned? It was a kind of feeling, a kind of understanding, and an indescribable gain. If it was said that Yixian was a master when it came to battle in the past, then the current Yixian was a master of a generation. After this baptism, Yixian would be even more proficient in using the same skill. This was an opportunity that could only be encountered but not sought after. It could be said that it was more valuable than any other reward. The voice was silent for a moment, as if recalling Yixian's actions during this time. Indeed, he had grown a lot. Then he said, "Good. It's good that you've learned it. Keep it well, this is your reward." A jade talisman flew towards Yixian. Yes, this was Yixian's reward. "Little brat, from today onwards, you are the only living successor of the archaic god emperor. Everything I have will belong to you. However, you are not strong enough, so I gave you too much. Otherwise, it would only cause you more trouble. Work hard. Every time your strength reaches the required level, the jade talisman in your hand will activate a new notification for you." Alright, this sovereign strength is not enough to create another test like this. From now on, there will be no more supreme trial. You must remember that you have never participated in any supreme trial. You have only obtained the title of an intermediate trial participant. Chapter 2143. Yes, this junior understands. Yixian nodded respectfully. He naturally knew what kind of treasure the primordial god emperor had left for him. It's good that you understand. Remember, before you are strong enough, do not reveal your identity. Your enemy is so strong that you cannot imagine. Of course, don't think that I'm looking for trouble. In fact, even if you don't want to, they'll still find you and kill you. They won't let any genius go. Or rather, they won't let any god go. Disperse, disperse. Let everything turn to smoke. After hundreds of millions of years of struggle and countless reincarnations, what is the end? Yixian did not quite understand the primordial god emperor's last sentence. However, Yixian understood who the primordial god emperor was referring to. Although the primordial god emperor did not say it clearly, he already knew. Annihilation. Yes, annihilation. Annihilation was unavoidable in the ancient war. The voice disappeared and the floating island Yixian was on began to crumble rapidly. Yixian did not dare to linger and immediately walked into the transfer array to leave. You succeeded? The gatekeeper asked excitedly as soon as Yixian appeared. Yes, I succeeded. Yixian did not hide anything. Ha 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 ha, you succeeded. Master has finally found a new crown prince. No, it should be the new successor of the primordial god emperor. Little master, please forgive this old servant's rudeness. This old servant no longer has the ability to follow you, so please allow this old servant to continue following you. Farewell, little master. The gatekeeper suddenly laughed heartily. At the same time, Yixian was forcibly transported away. Just as Yixian left the Valley of Despair, the entire Valley of Despair suddenly underwent a huge change. It was as if a mirror had been shattered, and the entire Valley of Despair actually shattered into pieces. Regardless of whether it was the mountains, the rivers, the clouds, or the flowers and trees within, it was as if everything was an illusion, and at this moment that illusion had been shattered. This process did not last long and only Yixian witnessed it. When everything was over, the Valley of Despair instantly returned to its original state. Even if it was just one of the stones, it was still the same as it was in the beginning. However, Yixian knew that this Valley of Despair that looked exactly the same was no longer the same. This was because this place had lost the value of its existence and had lost his soul. From today onwards, this place was just an ordinary Valley of the Despair domain. Of course, only Yixian knew about this. He silently watched the Valley of Despair disappear without saying a word. Although he had only interacted with the primordial god emperor for a very short time, Yixian didn't have any pleasant memories in the Valley of Despair. However, in that final moment, the primordial god emperor left Yixian with unimaginable wealth and opportunities. All of this made Yixian unable to forget this place, and similarly, he could not forget the primordial god emperor. It's time to leave. Yixian turned around and prepared to leave. However, when he turned around, he discovered that Fian was actually standing behind him again. You little girl, when did you come over? You came and went like a ghost. Next time, can you not stand behind me like this? So scary. Would young master be scared by a little girl? Fian smiled as she looked at Yixian, the joy in her eyes unconcealed. Yixian was speechless. It was better not to provoke this girl. This girl's mouth was very slippery. In any case, Yixian was not confident that he could win against her. Ding! System notification. Congratulations to host for completing the random mission. Explore the Valley of Despair. Ding! System notification. The system's repair rate has increased. Currently 40%. Ding! System notification. The system's humanness has increased. It will take the initiative to give the host a reasonable suggestion. Ding! System notification. Congratulations to host for completing the random mission. The system will randomly give out a reward. Ding! System notification. Congratulations to host for obtaining a reward, 10 Devour points and a random special material. A reward of Devour points? Yixian was a little surprised. He could actually reward 10 Devour points? Of course, this was a good thing for him, so he naturally wouldn't mind. However, in reality, Yixian didn't really care about the reward. What he cared about was the system's other notification. He didn't expect that the system's humanness would increase. In the future, it could give him some reasonable suggestions. Of course, Yixian understood in his heart that the system was, after all, a system. It would never be able to give Yixian guidance like a person. The so-called reasonable suggestions were nothing more than references based on data analysis. In the end, only Yixian could make the decision on what to do. Of course, this was undoubtedly very good news because the system had absolute rationality. The system wouldn't act based on emotions. Therefore, the results of its analysis were definitely the most suitable solution. However, he didn't know what the function of this function was. It seemed that he would have to wait and find out in the future. The Valley of Despair. Yixian was still a little reluctant to part with it. To be honest, ever since he came to the realm of the gods, Yixian spent most of his time in the Valley of Despair. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the Valley of Despair was the place that Yixian was most familiar with in the realm of the gods. Unfortunately, he didn't even have the time to see the full picture of the Valley of Despair. He didn't even have the time to enter the inner part of the Valley of Despair before he disappeared in front of Yixian. Then what should he do next? Forget it, let's go find Luo Luo, Yixian said indifferently. After that he walked forward. Fian silently followed Yixian's movements and didn't say much. Emoshangge. It seemed that it was time to take a look at this Emoshangge. Yixian had heard of this Emoshangge for a long time. Furthermore, this Emoshangge was a puppet of annihilation. Therefore, Yixian had to take a look no matter what. 999,999 totem beasts? You want to collect all of them? How could I give you the chance? Yixian advanced very quickly. He didn't even need to care about Fian. This was because even if Fian was left behind, as long as Yixian stopped, he would be able to locate Yixian in an instant and teleport over. To be honest, Yixian was quite jealous of this ability. Unfortunately, the system was damaged, causing him to lose a lot of things from before. Now he had to travel by himself. Emoshangge was located in the Emoshang mountain range. It was because of this that it was called Emoshangge. This was a very isolated sect. Although they possessed absolute strength in this region, they very rarely appeared before the eyes of the people of the world. Chapter 2144. Emoshangji's disciples were stationed in Emo City for a long time. At the same time, it was also the main place where Emoshangge recruited new disciples. Yixian's current location was precisely Emo City. Dear guests, what would you like to eat? Yixian and Fian were currently sitting in a restaurant. This restaurant was directly opposite Emoshangji's office. At this moment, there was a sea of people outside. No one knew what they were doing. Waiter, what is this Emoshangge doing? Why are there so many people gathered around? Hey, are you from another city? The waiter asked with a smile. Outside? All right, Yixian would treat himself as a foreigner for the time being. And yes, we came from outside. Oh, no wonder. Today is Emoshangji's once-in-a-decade disciple recruitment day. The people you see all came outside Emoshangge with the intention of giving it a try. Their goal is to see if they have the chance to become Emoshangji's disciple. However, I've been here for hundreds of years. I've seen Emoshangji's disciple recruitment so many times. These people, I'm afraid it would be very good if even 1% could enter. Hearing this, Yixian pretended to be profound and asked, Oh, is the test that difficult? From what I know, this Emoshangji's strength is only so. Why is it so attractive? That waiter looked at Yixian with a strange expression, then said without hesitation, Dear guest, you came from outside. It's not strange that you don't know. This Emoshangge is not that simple. Not only are they proficient in the way of beast taming, they are also proficient in the art of restriction. Furthermore, Their divine abilities are also extremely powerful. Emoshangji's Emoshang training camp can be said to be a gathering of all the geniuses in the surrounding 100 realms. The divine realm was very big. Therefore, the unit of measurement for distance was the realm. The so-called one realm, if it was any other place, was even comparable to the size of a continent. 100 realms, the range represented was really not small. If it was population within the 100 realms, there were probably more than hundreds of millions of gods. Yixian nodded and pretended to be surprised. Really? I didn't expect this Emoshang pavilion to be so powerful. However, what's up with this Emoshang training camp? Is it an academy? Haha, customer. You really know how to joke. However, what you said is correct. This Emoshang training camp is indeed somewhat similar to an academy. This little one will explain it to you like this. There are 3 rankings in this Emoshang Academy. The first ranking is the Emoshang Academy. The people on that ranking are the strongest people in the Emoshang Academy. The attendant paused for a moment and continued. The second ranking is called the Genius ranking. Of course, under normal circumstances it's called the Genius ranking. The figures on the second ranking are all young people, and it's a gathering of all the geniuses in the 100 territories of the Emoshanga. As for the third ranking, it is the overall strength ranking. It marks the most powerful families and sects in the 100 territories of the Mozhang Pavilion. Yixian nodded. Suddenly his interest was piqued. He asked with a smile, I heard that there's a sect called the Myriad Beasts Divine Sect. They seem to be quite strong. I wonder what's their ranking on the power rankings. Myriad Beasts Divine Sect? That sect doesn't even have the qualifications to enter the ranking. Not to mention there's internal strife now. As far as I know, the Myriad Beasts Divine Sect at its peak only obtained the qualifications to enter the ranking. Enter the ranking? They don't have a chance at all. Hearing the attendant's words, Yixian was slightly surprised. That Myriad Beasts Divine Sect didn't even have the qualifications to enter the ranking. It seems like this Emoshang Academy's ranking was indeed not to be underestimated. Attendant, I'm asking you, are there any requirements to enter the Emoshang training camp? As Yixian spoke, he took out a few dozen divine crystals and handed them to the attendant. Divine crystals were the common currency of the divine world. However, that was only for the gods. In fact, mortals didn't even have the qualifications to use them. The attendant was incomparably terrified. Not to mention a few dozen divine crystals. Even if he didn't eat or drink for 100 years, he wouldn't be able to earn a single divine crystal. Of course, he wouldn't be stupid enough to refuse. He immediately took the divine crystals. After receiving the benefits, the attendant didn't hide anything. As long as Yixian asked about something, he would explain in great detail if he knew anything. As it turned out, there weren't many requirements to enter the Emoshang training camp. First, you had to have a clean identity. To put it bluntly, someone had to introduce you. Second, you had to have a certain level of talent. Realm was secondary, talent was extremely important. There were only these 2 requirements and nothing else. In fact, Emoshang Academy hid it very well. For example, this Emoshang training camp seemed to be a convenient place for everyone. A place that imparted divine arts selflessly. However, Yixian, who knew the nature of Emoshang Academy, was very clear on what they were. Alright, waiter, go and get us something to eat. Yixian waved the attendant away, but he was planning in his heart. It seemed that this Emoshang training camp needed to take a look. Although finding Lualua was important, Yixian couldn't neglect news of the Annihilation Organization. Besides, news from Bai Swansea hadn't come yet. Even if Yixian delayed a little now, it didn't matter. The connection with Lualua was still there, which meant that Lualua wasn't in any danger. Girl, your young master. Am preparing to go to Emoshang training camp for a while. What are you going to do? Yixian looked at Fian. In name, Fian was Yixian's slave, but in reality, Yixian had never treated Fian as a slave even once. At this time, Yixian was preparing to enter Emoshang Academy, and was also thinking about Fian. Since the young master wants to go, then this little girl will accompany the young master in. Haha, so confident. Why, do you think you can definitely go in? If the young master can go in, then this little girl can go in. Fian's answer was very good, very strong. However, Yixian didn't know where Fian's confidence came from. Not to mention other things, just that introducer Fian as a slave probably couldn't get it, right? As for Yixian himself? What introduction? It wasn't a problem at all. What was Yixian's identity in Lingxian Pavilion? That was the pavilion protecting elder. In other words, if Yixian wrote an introduction for himself, it was guaranteed that the people in Emoshang Academy would have to carefully serve him. How could the others compare to the recommendation of Lingxian Pavilion's pavilion protecting elder? Without hesitation, Yixian directly made a recommendation for himself. However, he didn't really make things difficult for Fian. Instead, he made one for Fian as well. After eating a sumptuous meal, Yixian and Fian walked towards Emoshang Academy's office. Chapter 2145. Line up, line up. Why are you cutting the line, kid? How could they expect Yixian to queue up in such a long line? They were overthinking things. Thus, Yixian led Fian straight to the front, intending to cut the line. This immediately caused dissatisfaction among the others. However, Yixian didn't care about these people at all, even though the person who spoke was a sky celestial. Ignore him. Where does he think this is? The disciples of Emoshang Pavilion won't care about him. Everyone looked at Yixian with disdain. When Yixian walked to the front, the disciple in charge of handling matters really said to Yixian, "Hey little brat, if you want to register then line up. Emoshang Pavilion doesn't welcome people who don't follow the rules." "Oh, is that so? You really don't welcome me? Then I'm leaving." Yixian had already taken out his own handwriting, but he still put on an act as he spoke. The disciple looked up. This was the first time he had met someone who spoke to him in such a manner. One had to know, which person who came to the Moshang Pavilion didn't do everything they could to enter the Moshang Pavilion. This time it was a guy who wanted to leave without a word. It would be hard not to attract attention. However, when the disciple saw what Yixian was holding, his heart skipped a beat. Lingxian Pavilion was an auction house, but at the same time it was an auction house that no one could afford to offend. Lingxian Pavilion didn't just have resources, it also had strength. "Hey, wait a moment. Can you let me take a look at yours? Didn't you say that you don't welcome me? I think it's better for me to leave." The corners of Yixian's mouth curled up slightly. This was the effect he wanted. "Hey, young master, please wait a moment." Emoshang Pavilion's disciple was negligent. Please don't blame him. At that moment, a middle-aged man stepped forward and glared fiercely at the disciple. Then he cupped his fists respectfully at Yixian. The reason? It was very simple. The item in Yixian's hands was something that even a pavilion elder would have to treat with caution, let alone an ordinary disciple like him. Of course, Yixian might really leave. His goal was to enter Emoshang Pavilion. If he left just like that, then how was he going to continue acting? Therefore, Yixian gave the disciple a disdainful look before handing over the item in his hand. That disciple carefully took the Yixian, and the more he looked at it, the more frightened he became. How could he not be shocked? This was a pavilion protecting elder from Lingxian Pavilion, and his words were full of compliments and praises. F***ck, I wrote it for myself. Isn't that just saying nice things casually? May I ask your name, young master? Yixian. So it's young master Yi. May I ask what is the relationship between young master and this tower protector elder of Lingxian court? What elder? Who knows who he is? I just don't have anyone by my side at the moment, so I asked him to write. Why? Is there a problem? Silence, complete silence. At this moment, whether it was the people in line or the disciples of Emoshang Pavilion, they were all shocked. What kind of person was the tower protector elder of Lingxian court? However, in Yixian's mouth, it was as if he was just that. Then what kind of identity did Yixian have? Yixian could ignore the tower protector elder of Lingxian court, but that tower protector elder still spoke with compliments. Just this point alone was enough to prove that Yixian was not simple. No problem. Since young master wants to join Emoshang Pavilion, of course there won't be any problems. That disciple said with a smile. In fact, even in the God realm, one's identity and background were existences that could not be ignored. Yixian looked at that Emoshang Pavilion disciple and said arrogantly, "Who told you that I want to join Emoshang Pavilion? I just want to go to Emoshang training camp to play." Okay. If young master wants to join Emoshang training camp, it's naturally possible. That disciple did not dare to show the slightest bit of disrespect and said respectfully. Yixian nodded and did not say anything. Then Fian walked over. It was also from the Tower Protector Elder, but Yixian only wrote an ordinary one for Fian. After all, Yixian did not want Fian to be too eye-catching. That disciple looked at Fian, then looked at Yixian. He already understood that Fian was probably just Yixian's companion. Fian, right? There's also no problem for you to join a Moshang training camp. However, illusion disguises are not allowed in the training camp, so please remove your illusion disguise. What do you think? That last sentence the disciple asked Yixian because he understood that Yixian had the right to make the decision. However, how could he know that Yixian did not plan to care about Fian at all? Fian was also very direct. With a wave of her hand, she removed her illusion disguise. Is this okay? The voice was still the same voice, but the person was no longer the same person. The previous Fian was definitely not a beauty in Yixian's eyes. She was just an ordinary girl. But now, once Fian removed her disguise and revealed her true appearance, it made it difficult for countless people to shift their gazes away. So beautiful. Someone unconsciously said it out loud, and this was exactly what everyone was thinking. What was going on? Yixian was a little surprised. He was prepared to go and see how beautiful this Fian was, but who knew that with a wave of her hand, Fian actually returned to her normal appearance. My young master does not allow me to reveal my appearance outside, so please see if you can make it convenient. At this moment, Yixian frowned slightly and walked towards Fian. He really did look a little dissatisfied. When everyone heard Fian's words, they looked at Yixian with slightly angry expressions. In their eyes, Fian's exceptionally beautiful appearance should be displayed so that people could see it. However, this guy was actually so selfish as to not allow such a beauty to reveal her appearance. What was this? However, Yixian was also thinking about this sentence in his heart. F***ck, what does this have to do with me? It seems that I haven't even seen Fian's original appearance before. This is simply bullying people. Looking at Fian's smiling gaze, Yixian was incomparably depressed. Of course, Yixian did not need to find trouble with Fian for such a small matter. Since it's the young master's intention, then you don't have to remove your disguise. That disciple's heart was simply dripping blood. He actually had the chance to see such a beautiful face every day. This was simply unacceptable. Unfortunately, he did not dare to offend Yixian, so he could only think about it in his heart. Perhaps some people would say that since Yixian came to Moshang's training camp to investigate, then he should not be so flamboyant.